world gone insane. An upside-down civilization cannot be real. A world of madness and terror.
It's the Dana Gould Hour.
Today's show is brought to you by Casper. Get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting Casper.com/Dana and using the promo code Dana. Welcome to another episode of the Dana Gould Hour, recorded in Los Angeles, California, at Falcon's Lair Recording Studios, high atop scenic Mulholland Drive. A funny thing happened on the way to this podcast. I recorded the first interview with podcaster and Los Angeles comedy gadfly Mike Carano. I then recorded interview number 2 with comedian Valerie Tosi. Very funny new comedian, well, not new comedian, but I recently met Valerie for the first time. Valerie and I both grew up in Massachusetts, and we started talking about, among other things, the Jerry Lewis Labor Day Telethon, which always signaled to us the end of summer vacation and the start of school. After we recorded that interview, I thought, I should write the middle piece of the show about Jerry Lewis. He is a fascinating guy who's had 18 lives in one life. And then I went to bed, woke up, and the very next morning learned that Jerry Lewis had died. Oy. I hope it wasn't me. In any event, although I have never met Jerry, I did see him at what must have been one of his last public appearances here in Los Angeles. But I know people who know Jerry. So I made a couple of phone calls and got him over here. So with apologies to Valerie Tosi, who will be appearing next month, my guests today are the brilliant and hilarious Mike Carano. If you are a fan of comedy, you may not know him, but every comedian you know knows him. Also, director Steve Kessler, who directed Vegas Vacation, The Independent, and Paul Williams' Still Alive. Writer-director Rob Cohen. I squatted in Rob's office at the Ben Stiller Show in 1992, and we've been friends ever since. Rob has directed Speechless, Marin, and half of Season 2 of Stand Against Evil. Also, actor, writer, and artist, and Jerry Lewis expert, Ken Daly is here. Now, before we get into it, let's get some business out of the way. Let's say you want to lay eyes on me in person. On September 9th, I will be in Boise, Idaho, at the Egyptian Theater. And it will be advertised. I'm not just going to show up unannounced. On September 17th, I will be in San Francisco at the Comedy Day Festival in Golden Gate Park. On October 5th, I will be at the Stand Against Evil panel at the New York Comic Con. I think it's the 5th. Might be the 6th. On October 6th, it's definitely Plan 9 from Outer Space live at the Littlefield Theater in New York with myself, Gilbert Gottfried, Janet Varney, John Hodgman, and many, many, many more. October 6th will also be seeing the release of my new album, if that's what they're still called, Mr. Funny Man, available on Kill Rock Stars Records, audio cassettes, and 8-track tapes. On October 12th, 13th, and 14th, I will be back in Minneapolis, Minnesota, at Acme Comedy Club. On October 29th, Plan 9 from Outer Space live at Largo in Los Angeles. On October 31st, I will be trick-or-treating with my kids. And on November 1st, Season 2 of Stand Against Evil premieres on IFC, starring John Hodgman, Janet Varney, Nate Mooney, and Deborah Baker Jr. Season 1 is available now on Hulu. For details and links to all of this malarkey, please visit the live appearances page at danagould.com. And now, it's on to our filthy business.
It's
showtime.
Webster's dictionary defines the term gadfly as, well, I'm assuming they have a definition for it. I didn't look. But it probably has the face of my guest today right after the definition. And a beautiful pencil etching.
Did you say dadfly?
Gadfly.
Okay.
Gadfly. Someone who is always around and seems to be omnipresent and ubiquitous in your life. And my guest today, I've known close to 30 years.
Yeah.
Starting in San Diego, correct?
Correct, yes.
And then all the way into Los Angeles, and yet through friends from San Francisco.
Pretty soon Canada.
Yeah, and friends from San Francisco. Mm-hmm. If there was to be an oral history of the LA comedy scene in the latter half of the 20th century, it would not be complete without the voice of my next guest. I would describe you as, if the LA comedy scene was the Beatles, you would be that guy that was always with the Beatles.
Wow.
I don't know his name, but he's in Help. Mike Carano is here.
Even though I love that you just said you knew me for 30 years, but you didn't know how to pronounce my last name. That's all right.
How is it pronounced?
Carano.
What did I say?
Serrano.
Oh,
that's
no,
all right.
I know it's Carano.
And this is the sound of my voice.
Let's do that again. It's
terrible. Leave it.
I was seeing it in my mind.
Yeah, I know. I do that too. I was marrying very close friends of mine.
The first time I've seen you in long pants in your life.
Yeah.
So I know who you are.
I tried to make a change like 4 years ago when I went and bought long pants.
Let me do it again. I'm not going to cut that. I'm too vain.
You're not going to cut that?
I am going to cut that. I'm too vain because I look like an asshole.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
No. I mispronounced my friend's wife's name while I was on the altar marrying them.
Oh, no.
Completely. I called her Gillian. I'm like, I've known her for 5 years. It's Jillian.
I once blanked. I do know your name is Mike Carano.
I know that.
And when I hear it in my head, I hear Lisa Langgang saying it.
Yeah.
I blanked on my sister-in-law's name once at a party. This is,
Yeah. The bad part's going to be when it comes at a moment that could result in in danger, because I woke up this goes nowhere. I woke up one time 6 years ago, and I went in the bathroom and I couldn't tell which was the deodorant and which was the toothpaste, and I felt like I was going to cry.
Yeah.
And I went back to bed, and I'm like, when is that going to be? I'm on the freeway, and I'm like, oh, look at that off ramp. And I'm serious though. When is my brain going to miss a beat and malfunction like that when there's lives at stake?
Well, James Elroy, I told this story last month on the podcast, woke up one day and forgot his own name. Couldn't remember his own name.
For how long?
A long time. An hour or two. Or 15.
That's frightening.
Alcohol psychosis, I think it would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
that could have been my thing too then.
Could have been. Well, how you were a big drinker for how long?
The whole time up until it stopped. Since I was a kid. Always, right?
How old were you when you started?
I think I was like 8 or 9 at a wedding.
What?
Well, someone gave us champagne, and it was just pure bliss and pure joy. And then maybe a few years later.
Like, were you a drinker at 11?
No.
Like,
in high school. Yeah. In high school, it was every day, every night.
Sure. And you grew up?
Born in Tucson, raised in San Diego,
right.
and then
hence the
back
shorts.
and forth. Hence the shorts. Plus, it's easier.
Yeah.
It's more freeing. And anytime I hear of anything, I immediately assume I'm going to get it, like testicular strangulation. I heard that on a radio show one night, and I'm so paranoid about anything getting bundled up down there.
Sure.
And then I heard about heat affecting your testicles, so I'm like, shorts it is.
Yeah, the heat. John McGinley tells a story. I don't think he'll mind me telling it. Is that when he was doing Platoon, he was walking across a river, and he had a leech right up by his nuts because it was warm up there.
Yeah. That's weird.
That's why I always keep several ice cubes in my shorts. Right.
I don't like the fact that the leech had time to find the warm spot.
Yeah, no, they go right towards it. And there are those little animals. There are little fish that if you pee in a river, they'll go up the stream of urine into your dick.
Yeah, I would. I'm sorry to admit I'm so weak that I would just want to put a gun in my mouth after that.
Well, you don't know it at first, but this is what happens. You're peeing, and some kind of tiny aquatic biological organism goes up the stream of urine.
When you say fish, it puts it in a whole new...
Right. It might technically be a fish, but it's small enough to go... It's strong enough to swim against the tide of your urine and into your pee hole and up into your penis. And that is the origin of the song "What a Wonderful World" by Louis Armstrong.
Do you remember that terrible movie Sniper from the 90s?
Yeah, do it.
We were watching that movie, and we got asked to leave the theater, my friend Dave and I, a theater full of Marines in San Diego, and they couldn't deal with our laughing. And granted, I felt like I was going to get my ass kicked any moment. But there's a scene where the old sniper is with the new young sniper, and they're in a river, and they're going to sleep in the river.
It's like the idea of that.
And the guy goes, "Don't take a leak because the bugs will swim up your dick." And my friend Dave goes, "Too late, I already took him." He goes, "Too late, I already took a shit." And that's when the theater manager came over and went, "You guys are talking too much." And I'm sorry, I didn't want to.
Why can't there be good movies about snipers?
That movie is fantastic in its theory that the young guy is now the boss of the old bitter guy who's just been left out in the jungle apparently on salary. Well, right?
That happens a lot with snipers. You know, they always want the young. They always want the young new sniper.
That's right. It's like artists in the canyon.
I just imagine Taylor Swift. She's up there on the roof of the rifle, but she knows there's a Katy Perry there.
That's right.
Coming at her.
I'm glad you switched it and the younger one became the old one.
Yeah, exactly. Taylor
the 28-year-old.
Yeah, Taylor knows there's a 16-year-old sniper in a mall.
I love the competition of those people. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful.
Battling billionaires.
Yeah.
So
makes me realize there's no hope for me.
There's no hope for any of us.
Battling poor guy, like ready to just crawl into a hole.
Well, this actually leads me to the first question I wanted to ask you, and then it's great because we can backtrack because you do have a Forrest Gumpian life. There are 3 stories that I don't want to forget.
Okay.
I want to know.
I'm dumb. I'm dumber. I'm the dumbest.
Your dinner with Dr. Drew. What it was like at the San Diego Improv when Dave Becky would tell Bill Hicks to walk the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to know, but first and foremost, you told me recently you were in Death Valley taking photographs of your replica of Captain Kirk's chair.
Yeah.
And you nearly died.
Absolutely.
Because of car trouble.
But it's not the only time I've done it before, and I've done it to be funny.
I thought, this is my kind of guy.
Yeah. No, I find.
Let's start with the chair.
I have found myself in situations that are sort of life endangering, or at the very least dangerous.
Yeah.
To try to kickstart some adventure and kickstart something. I go out there to make a video, and it's not a jackass video or watch this. I'm going to be so insulting or so degrading to somebody. They're going to want to fight me, and people are going to find it humorous. Right. I'm trying to put myself in a predicament that's interesting, like an adventure.
I do that on stage. Quickly, I told a joke last night at UCB. Now, UCB is very, it's woke central. It's very, and I said a joke, have you ever dated the goth chick for 3 or 4 months before you realized she was just an Orthodox Jew? Exactly. Very funny joke. And then, but 7/8 of the crowd went, huh! Because I said Jew. And I said, no, you can say Jew if it's preceded by Orthodox.
Yeah.
It's like, you can say Orthodox Jew. You can say he's an Orthodox Jew. But you can't say he's a Jew. Then you have to say he's Jewish. But that doesn't imply
that you have to, or that's
the vernacular, acceptable vernacular. And then Jewish doesn't imply that they're squishy on it. But I guess if they were less squishy on it, they'd be Orthodox and you could just call them a Jew.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Here's the thing that I do. Nothing I'm saying is technically offensive.
Yeah.
It's all acceptable nomenclature. But everyone goes, I don't know how to laugh. And to me, I find fascinating. And I always want to go there. Half of my act is like, here's an unoffensive joke about a very offensive subject.
It's so tough now because you run the risk of finding people go, yeah, you say it like it is, just like Trump. You don't want those people to go, I like this guy because he says what he wants, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And hey, do more bits about the faggots. Like, that's the guy you don't want. I'm sorry I said that.
It's like, I definitely have fans that think I'm saying things that I'm not thinking.
Of course, that's what social media is all about.
And then they see me on Twitter and they're like, "What are you talking about?" Like, no,
social media is out all the time. Yeah. We get things sent. I get things sent to me all the time that are like, I'm like, hey, I was being sarcastic.
Yeah.
I don't really say it.
Though. Yeah, I don't really.
It feels weird to go like.
Yeah, I think that a stand-up show, you should experience a myriad of feelings.
Yeah, and of course, it's a journey. I mean, of course, you want it full circle.
Yeah,
like it's the best.
Yeah.
It's the best thing. I mean, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that's not how it's supposed to be done. Right. It's a show. So it's a thing. It's like watching a movie clip and going, oh, I didn't really like that guy.
Yeah. I'm so attracted to the when the audience doesn't know what's coming next or what to do. And I try not.
But I don't think you mean it in a malicious. I don't think you mean it in a way to make them uncomfortable. I still think you want to get. You want it to be.
No, I won't leave them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I like them to have a theatrical experience. I like them.
Well, it's a bigger
I like
payoff.
their expectations.
Yeah.
I like the audience's expectations to be surprised. It's the reason I often just in the middle of a set will go out into the audience and do my stuff without a microphone standing in the middle of the crowd, just because they don't think that they're supposed to be seeing that.
Do you still love doing it?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
good.
do.
Good.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Nothing is more exciting.
Did that feeling go away and come back?
No, a different feeling supplanted it. When I got hired on The Simpsons, I've told the story before, I'll make it very brief. When I got hired on The Simpsons, I was 36, and I had been doing stand-up comedy for 19 years at that point, because it started when I was 17. And
I'm so envious of that. I'm envious of people that knew what they wanted to do when they were young, because I feel like I don't know what I'm doing now. No,
We're gonna get into that.
But I mean it in my heart.
No, I know what you're saying.
Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing.
You are a gadfly, which is not a bad thing. But
I'm so dumb, I'm going to forget to look that up when I split.
Long story short, I was just about to I was 2 months when they offered me the job in The Simpsons. I was, it was 2 months away from getting married. My wife, my fiance, and I at the time had just bought a big house together. She had a great job. She was an agent, and having done comedy for 19 years, and the comedy boom had ended, and comedy was kind of at a nadir at that point. It was or nadir. It was the year 2000. The idea of, quote, being a grown up was very appealing to me.
Yeah.
And I don't have to go out every night. For a couple of years, I really dug the idea of getting up in the morning, having coffee with my wife.
And was that Simpsons gig the most money you had made at that point in life? So it was a total life perception change.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I made a lot on the cast of a sitcom, but it was the first time I was like an adult. My wife and I would get up in the morning, we would have coffee together, we'd get in our cars, and we'd each go to our offices. I had an office, I had cards, I had a pass to get on the lot, and I would do my grown-up job and then leave, and we'd have dinner with our friends and get in bed and watch television together. And it was just like, we really loved being like a very traditional lifestyle that comedians don't have.
Isn't that odd? Would you have ever thought that when you were younger, that you would like that?
No, I didn't. There's that great scene. It's a story that Jerry Seinfeld tells. I think he tells it in the movie Comedian, about some big band gets into town, big brass band, like a big swing band. And the bus breaks down, and they're walking to the hotel, and they're looking in the windows of these people that are having dinner at the dinner table. And the band is like, people really live like that? Yeah. It was that different thing. And I really enjoyed it. But after a while, it started to really kill me.
Yeah.
It wasn't who I was. And I really we were at a party, and somebody said, are you Dana Gould? And I said, I used to be. And my wife said, you have to go back and do what you do.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing it.
The longest I've ever gone without doing stand-up is 6 weeks.
That's not too shabby.
Even at the height of The Simpsons. But I wasn't trying. I was just terrified of losing it.
Do you have the same feeling when you get off stage now that you did like 25, 30 years ago?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And,
especially if you
does it hold you over, or does it make you, are you ambitious to go back and write more material to add to that?
No, I have an album coming out in October.
Do you hate everything you've done like I do?
No.
Not everything you've done. You're a piece of shit.
Yeah. Two months ago, I was in Atlanta shooting the show, the little thing called Stand Against Evil, premiering on November 1st on IFC. And I was talking to John McGinley about how great Adam West was. And I was going on and on and on and on and on about how great Adam West was. And I woke up the next morning to find out that Adam West had passed away. And that resulted in the Adam West segment on the podcast 2 months ago. As I was putting together this podcast for August, I was trying to come up with an angle for the middle piece, which is always the thing that I do in the podcast. And I was talking to very funny comedian Valerie Tosi about how you always knew it was time to go back to school when the Jerry Lewis Telethon would start, the ads for the Jerry Lewis Telethon. And I thought, I should do it about Jerry Lewis. Perfect. One of those things that's right in front of you, and so much story there. But it's just one of the, he's in front of you, but you don't really think about it. And quite literally, the next day, he died. So, moving quickly, I have assembled a team of Jerry Lewis experts, one of whom has spent a lot of time with him.
Yes.
One of whom spent some time with him.
Yes.
And one of whom I think knows everything about him. So let me introduce those guests in that order. A very, very talented writer and director. He's directed such films as Vegas Vacation, The Independent, Paul Williams' Still Alive, the funny and talented Steve Kessler.
This is the sound of my voice.
I met Steve Kessler through my next guest, who I've been very good friends with for more years than I care to think about. Also, now a very talented director in his own right. Directed half of the season of Stand Against Evil. If you know anything about my next guest, two things instantly come to mind. He's naughty by nature, but he also let the dogs out. Funny lady, Rob Cohen.
This is the sound of my voice. Thank you.
And lastly, but certainly not leastly, to make up a word, a very funny actor and writer, and also appears this season on Stand Against Evil. But that's not the only way I know people. It's just I hire people I know because I don't care about people I don't know. Ken Daly, ladies and gentlemen.
This is the sound of my voice.
Let's start with where your lives intersected, and then we'll work backwards about the Jer. Because there's a lot about him.
There's a lot.
Whole huge. The telethon alone is one person's career.
Yeah.
And yet it's just a thing. You go, oh yeah, he also did that.
I'm of the age where I'm a Jerry Lewis telethon. That was my into Jerry Lewis, was the telethon.
Even at 9 years old, I was really obsessed with The Day the Clown Cried, which was, no, I'm kidding. But like the telethon is an entire focus of someone's career. The Day the Clown Cried is like could be the entire focus of somebody's career, which for those of you who don't know, is basically The Day the Clown Cried is to Jerry Lewis what Smile was to Brian Wilson until he made Smile and you realized, it's not as good as Pet Sounds. But this goes back to the 90s. You had a film that you wanted to make called The Independent.
Right.
Tell us a little about that.
I had an idea to do a film about a filmmaker who was kind of a Roger Corman-ish exploitation filmmaker, and except that he made socially relevant films and his business was going under and his daughter was going to come and help him save his business. And we had this idea to put Jerry Lewis with a bunch of younger comedians around him. Mm-hmm. You were one of them, Dana.
I am.
And Janine Garofalo was going to play his daughter.
Yeah, Jane Ann Garofalo.
Yes, and Odenkirk and just a ton of people.
And this is in the mid-90s when we were all just kind of getting our footing.
Yes, it was.
96 or 7.
96, I think.
And somehow I was a huge telethon fan. Even when I got old enough to drive, I drove to Las Vegas to try and see the telethon live.
Really?
Which I couldn't get in until I went back to the motel really dejected. And at 4 a.m, I woke up and I saw that the band that I had seen earlier that night in the lounge was now on the telethon. I was like, maybe I can get in now. So I got in at 4 a.m.
Really?
And stayed until the end. Yeah. Saw Sammy Davis. It's very, very exciting.
It's amazing. And for people, I'm assuming that people that don't even know, in the 1950s, when Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin were a team, in which I did not know, they were a team for 10 years to the day.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Their last performance was the 10-year anniversary of their first performance together.
By design.
Or happenstance.
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly. But yeah.
And they were the biggest stars in the world.
Yeah, they were.
Incredible
there's no modern analogy to how big they were. You can't point to anybody today and say they were that big.
Right.
Because the communication was so much. At one point during their career, they had a show. They were the biggest nightclub act in the country. And this was when nightclubs, was before television, when nightclubs were huge.
Yeah.
And
he told me, by the way, they would do 5 live shows a night.
Yeah, at
like
the Paramount. Paramount, they went from 10 a.m. to midnight, and some people would stay the entire day.
Yeah.
And one time, they were so popular the only way they got people out of the Paramount was to say they were going to do a special show from their hotel room window.
Yeah.
And they ran out the back of the building, and the crowd ran out and went into the street. And then they had to do he threw $1,001 bills out the window and stuff. It was massive.
Yeah.
And it was just pure silliness. And I think that was, you dig back to all the cultural aspects. I think after World War II, people just needed to let the gas out, and they didn't want to think. And it was just pure silliness. And that takes us, if you follow that thread, that takes you to Steve Martin. But we have to go back here first. So at one point in the 50s, a member of their band said, could you just publicize this thing? My daughter has this malady, or MDS, muscular dystrophy, which is a musculoskeletal disorder. And he did it and they said, yeah, this is a great charity. Please donate. And then that sort of started the ball rolling, that became his pet charity.
It became his passion.
Yeah, it became his passion in life.
Yeah.
And then he started to do an annual telethon on Labor Day. After his film career waned, which is not an insignificant thing. It's like, and he was also like the biggest film stars in the country. He kept the doors of Paramount open for the entire early 60s.
It was, I believe, famously said, but I know certainly Jerry told the story many times, that the president of Paramount said, if Jerry Lewis wants to burn the studio down, I'll give him the book of matches.
So even after his film career had waned, he would do this telethon every Labor Day.
Right.
And that sustained that kept him in front of the public too. Like, he never went away.
At some point, there was a crossover where he was really more known for the telethon than he was for films to a lot of people.
Well, for me, like our generation, it was definitely like you would see Jerry Lewis movies on TV, but it's that guy from the telethon.
And then he became known as this very emotionally unstable and possibly addicted to amphetamines comedian who would do the telethon, stay up all night, and the longer the telethon went on, which was from 9 p.m. at night, I believe, to like 6 p.m.
There's about 21 hours. Yeah. 21 hours is a long time to be awake. It's a much longer time to be on stage.
Yeah.
And I think that into his 70s, he would stay up the entire time. And then at some point, it went to he would take a few hours of sleep. But man, when he stayed up all night.
Yeah, it became this sort of, it was like watching one of those dance marathons. It was like they shoot horses, don't they? The crazy thing about Jerry, not unlike President Trump, is that you began to realize, oh, this guy's genuinely crazy.
Yes.
And you get to watch him, like Trump, go up and down. Gets manic and crazy, and then would calm down a little bit, and then he was manic and crazy again. And people are just now realizing with Trump, it's not a pivot, it's a cycle.
And with Jerry, that's why you watched. You watched for those just crazed, manic moments, which would always come.
Yeah.
He sang at the end of the telethon, "You'll Never Walk Alone."
Right.
And there was always a question.
It really should have just been "You'll Never Walk."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was always
a cry before he got to the end.
Always a question of whether he would, start crying and not be able to finish the song. And the years he was very addicted to pills, he would never finish the song.
Yeah, he became addicted to Percodan because he did years and years and years and years of pratfalls. And he, one time in Vegas, chipped his spine and became addicted to Percodan. And he's supposed to take one a day, and he was up to 13 a day. And he says that there's a period of time of which he has like 5 years in the early 70s he doesn't remember really.
And not to skip around my wonderful Jerry Lewis stories,
no,
but I
please,
will tell you that
important.
one of the first times I met him, he said to me,
I need to be paid in Percodan.
He said, I live with constant pain. I am never without pain. And this was, now they sell on TV these little things you can hit a button and it massages you anywhere, like it sends vibrates.
Yeah.
But he had a very early, imagine like early cell phones, but applied to this kind of technology where they would have buzzes and so he had like this big box that he told me it was one of the first 4 made.
Probably.
To help him with his send signals to his spine. But he did tell me he's lived in constant pain.
But so let me ask you a question. Then supposedly he went into when he got off Percodan, he went into like a controlled coma or something.
That I don't. I don't.
How
know.
did the pain go away? Did he ever?
The pain never went away.
It never went away. Oh, he was in constant pain.
Yeah.
Okay, it never went away. Okay.
So to hear him,
also in constant pain, John F. Kennedy.
but that yes,
from his head injury.
yeah, with moments of great relief.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
From the moment the bullet struck his head to the moment he died, he was in constant pain.
Yep.
No,
But
he
he wasn't
had-
thinking about his back.
And yeah, JFK's back was made of popcorn, and he was in constant pain. And Jerry, when he says I'm in constant pain, that's a great thing because we don't really have anybody like that in comedy now, where he would talk about himself in the third person, non-ironically, and would go from there was no nuance to Jerry. There was no gray. It was black and white. He was literally running around with his pants off, dumping water on his head. And then I was watching a documentary about him last night, and he told the story this way. Many people would say, well, I get held back in fourth grade. And he goes, every child in the classroom was called to the board to be promoted. And I was left alone at the desk, not promoted. And that is when Jerry Lewis learned trauma.
yeah,
Yeah. And didn't he say, was it to you or to Rob or to Steve? He said he had to go pick up his daughter, but instead he goes, there are times in a man's life when his child needs a father. And that was his call.
Not me. No,
That was
just a few times.
I don't hate everything I've done.
How'd you come to that? Because that's
Well,
I'm embarrassed by anything and
Okay,
everything
great.
I've
Now we
ever
can-
done. I mean,
The perfect
every
opportunity.
now and then there's a thing that I'm proud of, but by and large, I'm like, it was embarrassing. That was embarrassing.
Name something that you've done, because I'm a big fan of yours. I think you're really,
I've made
I
like
think you're
60 short
hilarious.
videos.
Right. And by the way,
there's
people
like
should know.
5 that I
Spell
think
your
are
name,
funny.
Carano.
Yes.
And you're on Facebook, and your videos and your posts are hilarious. People would be astounded to know that you weren't technically a comedian.
Thank you.
They're hilarious. Name something you've done that you hate.
I love doing my podcast, but it's unlistenable. Does that make sense? Like if I listen to it back, I'm so embarrassed. All I think of is I'm so goddamn dumb, and I have to face that reality, and I have to accept it and embrace it somehow. And I am dumb, and I'm also it's like a
No, because dumb people think they're smart.
no. But I listen to it, and I'm like, I'm a middle-aged man in Death Valley shooting video of a donkey, and it opens its mouth, and all I can think to say with complete earnest is, oh my God, it looks like the cartoon. It's just like, I freaked out. I'm like, it's just like the cartoon.
That's good, though.
And then I saw Roadrunner like a year earlier, and I was like, it's exactly like the cartoon. This is unbelievable. Like, is that where my knowledge base came
That's
from?
all good. But everything that you're doing, there's a great story. Someone told me.
Tom Sawyer.
No, I actually think Scott Aukerman told me this story. Friend of Scott's was a PA or something on Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, the film. And there was a monkey on the set. And his friend's just a PA, but he's looking at the monkey. And David Lynch goes to his friend and says his friend's name is John. I don't know his friend's name. He goes, John, what you doing over there? Ever seen a monkey before? And he goes, no, it's fascinating. He goes, you want to play with it? He's like, yeah. And David, can John hold the monkey? Trent goes, sure. Dave goes, all right, we're going to take a 5-minute break, everybody. John's going to play with the monkey. And then John play with the monkey. He goes, what do you think? It's amazing. Yeah, crazy, ain't it? Yeah. Okay, back to work, everybody. And that's great to have, like that, to stop. And I mean, like everything you say, everything
Makes
you say
me
is
fall
like,
in love with David Lynch more.
Yeah.
Like,
The
fact that he's got this enthusiasm and
but
he's
that's
like,
but that's exactly it. It's just this enthusiasm for these little moments.
yeah. God, I hope that never goes away. I hope that doesn't go away.
The idea of let's use the Captain Kirk Death Valley chair episode of your life as a microcosm for your existential crisis. Mm-hmm. And we'll start with what possesses you to build and or purchase a replica
that one's
of Captain
legitimate.
Kirk's chair.
That one's legitimate.
TOS, by the way. The original series.
I've had a couple of things happen in my life that I willed them to happen.
A three-way?
I don't believe that was not a good story. Not when someone's crying.
They never are.
They come to a real quick end when someone starts crying.
They never are.
Yeah, they can't be.
No.
Unless it's like that Rat Pack movie where it's Frank Sinatra lying in bed reading the newspaper with one girl lying on his chest and the other girl laying in the bed next to him sleeping. That's the happy ending. He's reading the paper, and whatever went down beforehand, you don't even need to know.
Yeah.
He probably didn't do anything. He didn't do any.
Yeah.
There's nothing on his
You don't
part.
want any part
It's
of
like
it.
a massage from two chicks.
Yeah. It's just a lot of work and tension.
Yeah.
And anxiety.
And it's hard to convince one of the people you really care about them. Right?
Let's not do
Takes
this.
the love out of making love.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not do
You're the one. But hold on one second,
all
because
bad.
she's here too.
It's all bad.
I forgot what we were talking about.
Captain Kirk's chair.
Two things in my life I wanted so bad, and they came to fruition, and I can't explain it. I don't believe in a higher power. I don't believe that I willed it to be, but I could not let it not happen. And the first one was my boss at the time goes, hey, do you know anything about Star Trek? And I went, yeah. And he goes, you got to go to this meeting at Paramount because they're thinking about doing some live shows based on their TV shows. And maybe Star Trek might be one of them. So I went to Paramount.
So who's your boss?
Robert Hartman, who owned the Improv.
okay.
He owned the Improv at the
Bob
time.
Hartman.
Yeah.
And
he's also my lone protector of my job, and he's apparently not in that position anymore. But maybe I don't feel like that's something I should discuss.
Well, I'll cut it.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
There's nothing I could say right now that I haven't already said publicly that's embarrassing or humiliating.
Right.
Or
Because you do work for the Improv Corporation.
Yeah.
At this point in time.
Yeah. Maybe not in an hour, but right now.
I'm
proud of myself for going out on a high.
You are the Scaramucci of the Improv at this
Oh, no.
point.
He didn't last that long. 30 years.
Yeah. And as he said, he didn't last as long as a carton of milk.
Unprepared, talking out my ass, and essentially lying through my teeth. I sat down.
Because you're not a Star Trek.
No, I am. I'm a Star Trek fan, but I'm not like Weinhold,
right?
Or you, or a lot of people I've met since. But I sat down with them and I pitched my idea for doing a live version of Spock's Brain, and they totally bought it. We shook hands and we left, and my boss went, "That was unbelievable." He goes, "They've never done this before," and they pretty much just said yes. A week later, I got a call, another meeting. We need to. We jumped the gun on that one, and I went back and I just said, "Nope. We're doing this. I'm going to direct it. I'm going to produce it. I'm going to cast it." And they all started throwing their ideas at me. And I just went, great idea. Ignored everybody.
Sure.
Did a live show.
Where?
The Improv in Irvine. I paid for
the old Improv in Irvine. Now,
the round one.
Right. The round Improv in Irvine, which is one that I used to work at.
The best club.
Was that the first one or the second one?
Second.
The second one.
Yeah.
Right.
Little tightly packed in amphitheater.
Right.
With a small stage. And like my ex-girlfriend said, after the new Monster Club opened.
The new Improv in Irvine is the largest number of seats before infinity, I believe.
Yeah, it is. I'm no mathematician, but I can't even do my taxes. Correct.
To paraphrase Drake Sather's joke about the Home Depot, you can't see the back wall because of the curvature of the earth.
I missed, right?
Yeah, I do too.
None of those jokes would be PC now, but they were so great.
Yeah, they were.
Sometimes I get a boner when I'm holding my gun. I can't do it.
No, I'll do it. This is our friend Drake Sather's joke. And you have to realize that this is 1990-91. The great Drake Sather, who wrote the movie Zoolander.
Yep.
And is no longer with us, sadly. But he had this joke. He had a baby son named Rudy, who's now a grown man. You know, sometimes I'm holding my son and I get an erection. And I talked to the doctor and I said, is this a normal reaction? And he called me a faggot baby fucker.
Give it to me straight, doc. Don't sugarcoat it with medicalese.
Give it to me straight, doc. Don't sugarcoat it with medicalese. Drake Sather's great.
So I had this deal with them, and it happened.
Yeah, you couldn't do that.
And we did the first show.
Right. I remember the posters.
And it was a ghost town. And the second show was a ghost town. All of my money, literally all of my money, was in the sets. And I was paying the cast very little, $100 a week, but I had 8 people doing multiple roles.
Brain. What is Brain?
The first thing I did was cast all my friends, which immediately, when I hung up the phone after the first call, I'm like, that was a mistake. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not even trying to find people to play the characters. I'm casting my friends.
Right.
Turned out it was the greatest choice. The show was magical.
Right.
Magical. A couple of rough spots. I had never directed anything, never produced anything. Third week, I was about to lose all the money and they were going to cancel it. And I just frantically started calling newspapers and radio stations begging for any press whatsoever. Fourth week, some guy came down nonchalantly, took some pictures, talked to the cast. Fifth week, I show up and we're on the front page of the Orange County Register, and I mean the front page of the actual newspaper, and then we're the entire front page of the calendar section and the entire back page, and we sold out every show after that for 13 weeks.
Wow.
Everyone at Paramount got fired, not because of me, but because of changes when Mark...
Canton or whoever.
Yeah, you know, you know who it was. I can't.
Yeah.
Brad Gray.
When
he came in, and we could have probably run for another year. And I stuck to the contract and stopped doing the shows after that period. It was one of the best jobs of all time.
Wow.
I mean,
it's sort of like the real life Brady Bunch, but it was just real life Star Trek.
We changed nothing in the script, and we didn't campy it up.
Right.
We did it verbatim, word for word, with all the original soundtrack and we had the original sets and stuff, and it played as a comedy completely.
Yeah, well, I do these live staged readings of Plan 9 from Outer Space, and we just do readings. We don't block it. It's not a play. It's just a reading. But it's phenomenal.
Are those readings funnier to people who have seen the movie or to people who haven't seen the movie?
I don't know. I can't conceive of somebody who hasn't seen the movie.
Yeah, and then sitting through a live reading because
but we're doing it October 5th at New York Comic Con and October 29th.
Oh wow, nice.
At Largo.
Same cast like Janet Varney and Patton. Is he going to be there too?
I don't know if Patton will be there. But it'll be Janet and me and David Koechner and a lot of
nice.
In New York, we have John Hodgman, Gilbert Gottfried, Scott Adsit.
Holy moly, you got Gilbert in it? That's going to be great. Who's he playing?
I haven't decided yet. Probably Eros.
Which one was Eros?
The guy that looks like Todd Glass.
The pilot?
You see, your stupid minds. Stupid. Stupid. I mean.
Do you get joy out of watching that film?
So much joy out of watching
Okay,
that
because
film. To this day. And that and Ed Wood and Plan 9 are two sides of a coin to me. I love them both so much.
Yeah.
They're clearly related.
Now, do you
I
love
them both for the same reason.
To me, the Tim Burton film, Ed Wood, is the most inspiring film I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
And when I watch it, I just feel filled with joy. Mm-hmm. And I go, I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy where I just make something, whether it sucks or not, and I'm enthusiastic about at least how they portrayed him in the movie. I understand in real life he had his difficulties and his issues.
He was a terrible alcoholic.
Yeah.
Johnny Depp based him a lot on Ronald Reagan, young Ronald Reagan.
Wow.
Yeah. Now here's a weird thing. I have the flying saucer from the opening credits.
I saw your pictures.
Is in my bedroom, and the flying saucer from Plan 9 is right behind the
wall. How'd you get it?
Cindy Scholzel, my old girlfriend, was working with, I believe the guy's name is Paul Boyington, on a project, and he built them and shot the opening credit sequence.
But what was the one you were holding in an Instagram photo or a Facebook photo a year or so ago?
Oh, that was the original saucer from Plan 9. I got that from Bob.
But wasn't that in that guy's house?
Yeah, Bob Burns. Bob gave it to me. It's right behind that wall.
What a gift.
It's right behind that wall. I know. I nearly cried when he gave it to me.
Wow.
I'll show it to you.
What a gift.
Yeah, I didn't know. I don't know what to do. It's in my house.
Build a safe box? Or?
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. And I have one of Vampira's fingernails.
Wow.
Not from her finger, a fake one.
I cut her teeth. Stop recording for a second. I cut her labia off.
I have her skull in
Sorry to say that about your friend.
I have her skull in the middle of a chandelier. So you start talking to him about this movie. Now, this is 1990, say 4 or 5, where he's not at a high point in his career.
It was a little later than that. I would say he was in his early
born in
1926.
1926. So.
Early 70s. I don't know that he had done a movie since King of Comedy. But here was the idea.
Which is a fluke because he wasn't making great movies. He was cast in this movie by Martin Scorsese.
So the idea was
basically playing himself.
Jerry Lewis, a bunch of alternative, before the term alt was poison forever, alternative comedians.
Right.
So a friend of mine who knew him was able to arrange a dinner for me, my co-writer, in Las Vegas with Jerry at a famous kind of big red booth Italian restaurant. Mm-hmm. And when we got there, Jerry sat down. I was very nervous because he was someone who, from the telethon, I worship.
Yeah, and he is a living legend.
Yeah.
I remember when I did Politically Incorrect with Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
And when he walked out, I started laughing. Like, I shook his hand. You were there.
Yeah.
And And you're just like, it's like meeting the Statue of Liberty. How are you?
Exactly.
Nice to see you.
And Jerry came in, in King of Comedy, he wears these very specific shorts in a lot of the movie. These kind of, you know what the shorts I'm talking about?
Tennis shorts.
Yeah. Well, they're tennis shorts, but they have a seam up the front.
They're like Lacoste or something.
I don't know who makes them, but he came in to dinner dressed exactly that way. So first of all, that was exciting. It was Jerry. It was Jerry, his lovely wife, Sam.
His second wife.
I don't know the number, but second wife.
Unless there was a third. I know. I know. Ken, how long?
I don't know how long they were married, but Patty was the one.
Yeah.
Right. Patty was the first wife. Sam, Sam and his longtime manager, sideman, Joe, Joe's last name will come to me. But anyway, we sat at the table, and within about a minute, Jerry had a whole water glass in his mouth. Right? And it was obvious to me. I was like, oh my God, Jerry Lewis is trying to show me that he's funny. And the dinner was like this remarkable, everything you'd ever wish. I never had a love like I had with Dean, 500 people out in that audience laughing.
Dean Martin, for people who don't know.
Yeah.
500 people out in the audience laughing, and it's just me and him having fun up there.
Which is true.
Yeah. Talked about Sammy, Frank, Liza. I mean, the whole wet dream. At some point.
And that's a school of show business that you appreciate more. There's no modern day corollary to it. And there was just this it was just different. Show business was just different then.
Absolutely.
And now everybody is alt. Everybody is alt. Bobcat Goldthwait was telling me that, like, when he worked with Don Rickles, when you meet Don, who's very much of that school,
right?
God rest his soul. He was Don Rickles, but then he was also incredibly sweet. I met Don Rickles. John Landis introduced me to Don Rickles, and Landis made the documentary about Don Rickles, Mr. Warmth. And he said, John, this is a friend of mine, a very funny comedian, Dana Gould. And Don Rickles went, what's your name? And I went, Dana Gould. And he goes, I don't care. and then I laughed. And then he just touches, he takes your hand and he goes, see, that's my thing. I insult people. You need a thing. You need to.
They're kind of like opposites, Jerry and Don.
Yeah, that's very well observed.
Because Don is the mean guy, but he was the sweetest man in the world.
Yeah. And Jerry was his child and was the prick.
Yeah.
But Don, to finish the point, Don, the only problem that Don had with Bobcat was Don could not wrap his head around the fact that Bob wore jeans on stage.
Did not respect the audience.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't do that. It was great.
Jerry Lewis told me that his father, who I believe was in vaudeville, told him that he should always have a red satin lining in his jackets.
Well, Jerry's dad, Dan, I think, that's the weird thing. Wanted to be a vaudeville star.
Yeah.
And never broke through, never made it. And Jerry was his only son, was only child. Jerry basically raised by his grandmother because his mom and dad were always on the road. And then when Jerry made it big, he would bring his dad on and his dad would sing songs, and his dad was like a Jolson wannabe.
Yeah.
But his dad never, could never break through. And then Jerry tells a story about at the height of Jerry's success, he had his father a custom made car that was $100,000 in 1963, whatever that comes out to today. And, he had a big red ribbon on it, and he goes to his dad's house. And you think, here's Jerry, who is the biggest star in the country. His dad, who just wanted to be famous, and it never happened. And Jerry comes to the door, brings in his car, and his dad walks out, and he looks at the car, and he goes, it's not a convertible.
Oh, my God. Perfect. Now we know what poisoned Jerry.
And then Jerry's son becomes a huge star on his own with no help from Jerry. And Jerry didn't seem to handle that well either. People don't realize Gary Lewis from Gary Lewis and the Playboys, this diamond ring doesn't show, was a huge pop star in the late 60s, wrote great songs. Green Grass is a really great song and not a hacky song. It's a very elaborate, well-constructed, beautiful pop song, and did it all on his own. And I don't think Jerry appreciated it.
I think a lot of those guys, right? Johnny Carson had the same issue with his kids, couldn't really quite give it up for them.
Of Shindig or one of those shows where it's Jerry and Gary both hosting it, and you can see the whole time how uncomfortable it is for Jerry.
Yeah, I'm sure.
To share the spotlight.
I've had a first-person view of this, but I don't know it intimately. Ben Stiller and his parents, that's how you do it. They seem to have mutual admiration.
Well,
I
know Ben and his sister Amy do have showbiz children stories.
Yeah. Oh no,
but
yeah,
I know,
I know that too.
I will say I was at Jerry Stiller's 90th birthday about a month ago, and Ben was there and Amy was there. They couldn't love him more. They all couldn't be more loving.
And Jerry could not be more proud of Ben. When I met them.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
I met them when I became friends with Ben, and they were so like, "Oh, you're one of Ben's friends. Oh, that's great." And then the story I tell, I met Jerry and Ann, Stiller and Mira, and then I'm on a flight going back to Boston, and it was about 2 weeks after I met Jerry, and Jerry was on the same flight because I guess they had a house on Nantucket. And Jerry was, "You're Ben's friend." I go, "Yeah, we just met." And he came back from first class and sat with me the entire flight. And I was like, "You do not have to do this, Mr. Stiller." He goes, "What am I going to do? Sit there, talk to nobody?" And he was telling me stories about meeting JFK and Robert Kennedy because he was a big star in the 60s. And then he went up to first class and made them bring 2 first class dinners back to coach for us. It was great.
After my whole ride with Jerry Lewis is when I met Jerry Stiller.
Right. That's the B-side thing to that's the B-side of
say
this
about
story.
Him, but you got to hear everything about Jerry Lewis.
Right.
To understand.
That's the great B-side of the story. But let's cut right to the telethon. What year did you see the telethon?
The telethon I saw when I was in my mid-20s, and it was so exciting for me because literally I would watch the whole telethon if I could from the time I was like
late
12
70s, early 80s.
Yeah, it must have been mid 80s that I went to see the telethon. It I believe was still at Caesar's Palace at that time.
But it was sort of the height of the telethon.
Yeah.
Right? It was at its peak.
I would say the peak you'd have to say peak telethon was when Dean Martin came on with
Frank Sinatra
brought Dean Martin.
And that was 81, I think.
Was it? Was
75. You would know, Ken.
80s? You guys would know better.
I think it was later than that. I think it was in the early 80s.
Well, anyway.
And what Jerry said to Dean when he came out? You working?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they couldn't continue it because of
we tried to get permission again about a year later, and I have a friend who works high up at CBS, and he went to Les Moonves, and Les is like, "No way," and didn't make any money. It didn't.
Even after selling out for 13
broke
weeks?
even.
Nobody lost money, but that wasn't enough.
I lost money, and but that was all right.
And you had the original costumes and
bought them all at the Star Trek experience in Vegas.
Right. Got it. Been there.
My dad built most of the sets.
Oh, great. Awesome.
Yeah. Even though that's not his job, but he wanted to. I have 3 captain's chairs.
3 of them?
Yeah. I have 2 in my living room right now.
And you have a girlfriend.
Not anymore.
Oh, dude, this whole thing just unravels.
Life has been tough lately.
This whole thing is unraveling like a $2 baseball. All right, we're going to stick to the microcosm.
I've had girls.
We're going to throw it. And you had
You've never seen my old house, have you?
No.
It was wall-to-wall toys everywhere. Lightsabers, swords, the entire bridge of the Enterprise, all the extra captain's chairs. I thought it was funny when I got this place in Orange County. Now I live in an apartment in Studio City, so things are kicking ass. I had this townhome in Orange County, and I never went in the living room for a year. I didn't go in it once. And I was asking my friends what to do. And one of my friends who was in Star Trek and in another film I made about Burt Reynolds, he goes, "Why don't you fill it with dirt?"
Wait, you can't. Okay.
Why don't you fill it with dirt and build like a fighting ring and put like bleachers around it and just never explain it? And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." I'm just going to go, "Don't look at that." And I owned it. And I was like, "I'll bring a cubic yard of dirt in here and build a little ring and just leave it." And then eventually I got the Star Trek set, so that it became the Enterprise. But
so you had to fight.
But I had toys everywhere. And
so you're like Brian Wilson. You basically had a sandbox in your living room.
Yeah, I didn't have it yet, but I ended up going with Star Trek. But there were toys everywhere. The entire hallway leading to the second floor was all my 70s movie posters. Doberman Gang, Logan's Run, Bad News Bears, of course, Smoking the Bandit. I recaptured all of my childhood in toys and in posters.
We all do it. Yeah,
$6 Million Man dolls, Evel Knievel with all the accessories. Everything I had as a kid,
Remember
I rebought.
the name of the sequel to the Doberman Gang?
Oh.
The Daring Dobermans.
Was it really?
Yeah, and one of them starred James Franciscus. I'm not sure which one.
The trailer for the Doberman Gang is just the best.
I just remember the song. They were the doggonest gang that you did ever see. All of them were
There's animal
animals,
abuse in
same
the
as you
trailer.
and me.
They're
Oh,
like,
I'm sure.
And
There's
it's
tons of it.
Trixie, and it's Bugsy, and it's so, and they're all jumping over a pole, and whatever the other dog, that little sad dog's name was, and he just hits the pole and throat.
Oh, no.
There's entire scenes in the trailer where it's a guy opening up Pepto-Bismol and drinking it, like to show, you know what I mean? But don't you love that? Like it's 20 seconds of.
Well, speaking of like crazy 70s movies, the one that I was went off on a big thing recently was The Great Smoky Roadblock.
I don't know what that is.
It was 1978, height of the trucker CB thing.
Yeah.
But it starred Henry Fonda.
The Great Smoky Roadblock.
The Great Smoky Roadblock.
That's the epitome of building an issue out of a non-issue.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the Emoji Movie. We have this phrase that needs to be a
We
movie.
got a roadblock up ahead.
Right.
90 minutes.
So now you have the captain. You have three captains,
Yeah.
Captain Kirk chairs.
Yeah.
And you are a photographer.
Yes.
Professional photographer, portraits a specialty, and you want to get this idea to take it to Death Valley.
I'm trying to do something creative with my time. I'm trying. And I take a lot of road trips because of anxiety. I've recently got a therapist, by the way, so
Good for
the
you.
road trips are less and less fun because
And you take road trips.
my car's a 2015. It's got 140,000 miles on it. I've probably driven 1 million miles on the last 5 cars in the last 15 years. I do about 70 or 80,000 miles a year for no reason whatsoever.
Right. But you like the idea because
I'm finding out now it's just escaping and not being in a place where people can't reach me and where I can just wear my brain out to the point where I can sleep. Otherwise, I'm going to overthink bullshit that is not important, not smart overthinking. It's not like I'm overthinking the world's problems. I'm overthinking insane.
No, I'm the same. Yeah, you're drilling down on some piece of.
But I'm recognizing it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I was trucking through Death Valley and I stopped at that brothel. Maybe you're not familiar with it. There's like a.
I'm not. I was just going to ask you how far it is to drive to Death Valley, but now I'm not.
There's a brothel that's kind of famous. I guess it was on television. And it's a tourist attraction.
Oh, it's that one outside of Vegas.
It's like an hour and a half
Bunny
outside of
Ranch or
Vegas.
something?
Yeah. But they have shirts that are the Subway sandwich logo, and it says Bunny Ranch, and it says Eat Fresh. And I got in my car, and but I spent 15 minutes going, that person doesn't know what they're talking, because that's an intimate act for one, and they're not going to let you do it. That doesn't make any, and it seriously got me worked up. I wanted to talk to the person who designed the shirt and go,
just storm back
you're
in.
so off on the, you so didn't capture what this is about. I get it, you're trying to be funny, but it just ate away at me. And I'm like, why am I wasting my brain on worrying about the logo they stole from Subway for a whorehouse?
Right.
And it's stuff like that, but if you go on a 12-hour drive, it wears you out and then you sleep and it's good. Mm-hmm. And maybe I get a podcast out of it. Maybe I get a photo out of it. And this one with the captain's chair, there was an intention to get a photo and I got it and I like it.
Right. Now, let me ask you 3 questions. And this has nothing to do with the Bunny Ranch. It has something to do with the photo that I was thinking about. How far is it to drive from here to Death Valley? How far is it to drive from where we are right now
to where I took that photo?
Or to a place that looks like you're in the desert?
Well, you could go out to Palm Springs and be in the desert, but to the place that I like that's outside of Death Valley called Death Valley Junction that I'm obsessed with. And I've been obsessed with it for 10 years. I accidentally discovered it one day when I was just aimlessly driving around. It's an hour and a half from Baker, so I guess Baker's about 3.5 from here. It's not that far.
So it's like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And it's a place unlike all the other places I've gone. I've gone as far as I can go where I can make it home that night without having to get a hotel. Hundreds of times. I've gone as far in every direction from LA or San Diego. And normally
Do you map it out? Like, I'm just going to drive to here and then turn around?
No, I know 8 hours is my max. If I'm driving for 16 hours, that's pretty much, and I understand that's way too much mentally.
Yeah.
Because normally I get somewhere and I loiter and I make a video or I record the podcast and I'm putting energy into that. So it's kind of exhausting me. But,
no, but I get it. I mean, I really do. There's 2 things. One, the beautiful thing about driving, it's also like cleaning your house, is it's a non-activity activity.
Absolutely.
You're doing something, but you're also doing nothing because you can't just do nothing. I get that.
Plus
Totally.
it feels like traveling. There's just something about moving that's good.
Yeah, I
when you're
agree.
a kid and the idea of getting a bike is so freeing. It's like, I have a bicycle. You're not really free. You're tethered to your parents in your house, but it feels like I'm out.
You're moving. You're moving. Well, that goes to on the road and quadrophenia and, it's all of these things are all about movement and travel and physical escape as a symbol for a
it's
journey,
weird that
a
when you
mental escape, a
recognize
mental journey.
When you recognize it just becomes less alluring.
Right.
I know this isn't good podcasting, but you can edit it out, but that's the living room.
Wow. That's your living room?
Yeah.
Now?
Well, that's the one in Orange County. All that
Right.
stuff's piled in the corner of this one down the street here.
Okay.
And more.
Did your girlfriend live with you?
No. We broke up like a year ago. She lives down the street. I still see her. I take care of her cat. No, it never did actually. But my nephew spent the night and he was sitting in his underwear, and I took a picture of him, and I immediately went, I got to delete that ASAP. It's like an 8-year-old boy sitting there in his underwear.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh God.
Yeah. Can't have that.
No, but I've had many, and I'm by no stretch a womanizer. It's not like every time a chick comes over, but I've had girls come over many times. I lived there 7 years, and every time they're like, how do you get girls over here? And I'm like, you're here.
Yeah, you're here.
Clearly. You're here. Somehow it works. It's weird that when you put yourself in a situation where you're clearly about to have sex with somebody and you go, how do you ever get laid?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, she's taking off her panties.
What struck you to photograph the captain's chair in the desert?
I wanted to do something that was actually involved work, because I don't think the photographs are that much work. And I have this constant struggle with it being art. I don't think it is. I think it's artistic, but I don't think it's art. I think if somebody sits down and actually creates something, I think if somebody writes something, I think if somebody writes a song, I think that's art. I think taking a picture is not art. You're capturing something, and you can have a talented eye and do a better job than other people. And I think the touch-up is artistic, but not. I have a struggle with this all the time and trying to validate that it's even contributing anything to the world. So I wanted to think
like Ansel Adams creates art with his photography.
He creates art in the darkroom. Like after he takes the picture.
Okay.
Pictures are bland until he burns the shit out of them. And they're beautiful and they're incredible. Yeah. But I wanted to do something that was work. And taking a 130-pound chair and putting it in the back of my Subaru and driving out to Death Valley and setting it up and putting in time. And it was worth it. And it was worth it just for the adventure of it. I feel better when I do something. I feel better when I go to the bank. I feel better. You know what I mean? I feel if I wake up in the morning and do laundry, I'm like, okay, at least it's a day that I did instead of another day's gone, I'm never getting back, and I'm just going to be dead in a box rotting in the ground, and I wasted another fucking day. And it's the same thing when you go to funerals. Every time I go to a funeral, I'm like, that's it. From here on out, I tell people I love them. I'm going to enjoy my life. I'm not going to focus on the negative. In 5 minutes, I'm in traffic going, fuck all these. I wish all these people were dead.
Yeah. Why can't Harrison Ford crash his plane into this traffic jam? That's what I think. Like, I am not a human being. I am a human doing. I have to, like, what I did today before you came over, is a full day for people.
What'd you do?
Okay. This is typical for me. This morning, I woke up at 8. My 2 oldest daughters were here. My youngest daughter is at camp. The nanny came over to take my daughters over to their mom's house. So the girls got up. The nanny came over. I had to help my daughter corral all of her cats, which travel with her.
That's right there is an amazing traveling cats, because
they only live 4 minutes away, so it's not
okay.
Not a big
I thought you meant they
literally live 4 minutes down the hill.
There's a friend of mine who lives in San Francisco who you may know. His name is Kennedy, who used to work at the Improv, but her boyfriend has a backpack with one of those bubble, like a spaceship thing, and they take the cat places.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The problem is, I don't think cats like it.
No. Our cats are pretty used to it. They're literally in the car 4 minutes, and they're at the
When I
house.
take my ex-girlfriend's cat to the vet, because I take care of her cat when she's at it, like I'll be taking care of her cat this week.
Never speak to her, never look at her. You have to.
The cat or her?
I'm kidding.
But that cat freaks. I took it to the vet once because of an emergency, and the cat was just
some cats
felt like it was going to its death.
Yeah, no, our cats are pretty savvy. So that was 8:30. Then
are you saying her cat's an idiot?
Then I ran to I had to go over the hill into LA, and I had to get a bunch of stuff dry cleaned to pick up tonight because I'm doing a role in a movie tomorrow, and I wanted to bring some of my own stuff because it's a low budget thing. And also because I have to have photos taken for my album, and I didn't, the next day, and I didn't have, so I have to do a bunch of then I had to go to Jones on 3rd and pick up some food for somebody who's coming over.
You know what's funny is,
and then I vacuumed that rug before you got here.
We're so sad.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a lot. And then you realize I had to go to the dry cleaner. What is that? No work at all.
Walking in, I had to drive over
handing somebody else. Yeah. Then I had to go to Jones on 3rd, upscale restaurant in the valley that's way overpriced. Yeah. I had to go to Morton's and get something. I was famished, for God's sakes, because the show started at 10.
No, I know. But it's just none of these things. Like my ex-wife would go, no, you have it's going to get even worse. My wife will say, you have your assistant go to the dry cleaners for you. Yeah. Then you call DoorDash and have them deliver the food. And I'm like, no, that's not the point. I've got to go do stuff.
You want to know something? If we lived more in the moment, and I forgot what phraseology you used a moment ago, but
human being, human doing.
Yeah. If you really live in the moment, that stuff's enjoyable.
One, I love to drive.
Yeah.
I listen to I caught up in the news. I got my daily rage all set with the news. And then I had a good time. And I feel like I accomplished a lot of stuff. I like to.
But are you envious of people?
I feel every day I am Indiana Jones outrunning that ball from the only good Indiana Jones movie, the first one.
Correct.
That's how I feel. Like every day I just get up and I just start running. And I just start racing.
Well, what's your greatest source of comfort? Your children?
Yeah. They're the only thing I've ever done in my life that's worth a damn. And my wife dragged me into adulthood, kicking and screaming. Yeah. And but I get up.
But it opened up it opened up like a door to a thing you didn't know was there, an adult. Right? Yeah.
I became an adult. And they're great. And they're, they're the best. And I've also done horrible things in my life.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Horrible.
Yeah.
And I am hampered by that
because
I can't let go of guilt over shit I've done that people have forgiven me for.
Myself as well.
I can't.
I dwell on it. I lay in bed and think of it.
I also can't let go of when people have let me down or people have. People that I was in love with broke up with me and I didn't want them to break up with me.
I'm with you.
I can't I can't move. I really.
Dana, I'm with you.
And I know it's
terrifying. It's terrifying.
I know it's me.
Yeah.
I know it's not them. And I know it has nothing to do with them. I know it has absolutely, positively. I say it in this moment. This isn't.
But if you look back,
it has nothing to do with them. It's something in me. It's a deep, deep brainstem problem.
But look at this. Do you look back 5 or 10 years and go, oh, I'm better now than I was back then, how I handled this?
I handle it better.
Yeah, me too. And I don't reflect on that at the time. At the time, I'm like, nothing's changed. I'm still riddled with anxiety. I'm still angry at everybody. I'm filled with hate.
But I chew on it every day.
Yeah.
I still chew on it.
Me too.
Every day.
My ex-girlfriend and I broke up. It could not have been more mutually agreed upon. We had a plan from day one. We're going to break up. This is not, we did. We talked about it day one. This is an affair. This is too weird. This relationship. This can't go on. 4 years later, we're still having 3-hour conversations, going on road trips, still completely in love. And I just went one day, do you think we're coming up on that time? And she goes, I'm kind of sensing that. And we just did it right then.
She was younger than you, right?
2 months later.
How much younger than you?
Way younger than me.
I've done the same thing.
But it's the best. It's without a doubt.
I'm not shaming you. I've done the same thing.
Best friendship, best relationship I've ever been in my life. Mm-hmm. It was a marriage. Yeah. And it never waned, but there just came a point where I was like, I think this is over. Mm-hmm. I think we did it. We went through this 4 years together.
Had an arc. Yeah.
Yeah. But so it took 2 more months for me to get jealous and angry. And she went, why are you snapping?
That happened with me.
She goes, why are you snapping at me? She goes, this wasn't my idea. This was both. And I went, yeah, but you don't like me anymore. She goes, we broke up. I go, but we don't hang out like we used to. She goes, we broke up.
Yeah.
And she goes, if I hang out with you, I want to hold your hand and I just want to do this stuff.
I was in a relationship after my marriage and it was very similar. Like when we broke up, I was like, I get it. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Totally cool. I want you to be happy. We're different places in our life. And then that was in October. And then in January, one day I wake up and I'd fallen apart.
Yeah. It's so.
And I don't know if it's shock but I also think it's
narcissism because
it's narcissism and it's I will tell you right now, it's all me.
Yeah, me too.
It has nothing to do with that person.
I want everyone to love me unconditionally forever, and I want to just wade through it and move on to other stuff and just be able to pick and choose what I want in life.
Yeah, and like intellectually, like this person that you're thinking about. It's like you're not thinking that they're thinking ill of you. It's like they're not thinking about you at all.
Most people aren't thinking about us at all.
You're done.
And I can't get that.
You're done. You're
like right now, my company is having meetings conspiring how to fuck over the photographer at the company.
Yeah. You're a fond memory that comes up every 10 days, maybe.
You're making it worse.
Oh, 76.
Wow.
Well, there you go. That's perfect.
Yeah.
1976, which is the height of that generation. It's not them at their height, but it's just at their peak ripeness. And it's just before they started to reach putrescence.
Well, for 75, I believe, I don't know when Frank Sinatra the main event in Madison Square Garden, but Frank Sinatra had these kind of years
where
in
he
the
boxed
wilderness.
Barbara Streisand. Is that what?
Yeah. Yeah. And he had these years in the wilderness. And I think they all around that time, I think probably the person that was doing best was Dean Martin, because Dean Martin had a TV show.
Yeah. And the one thing that Dean Martin had that none of them had was irony.
Yeah.
Like Dean was always on the outside kind of laughing at it. Like there was a story that there was a party for Paul McCartney and Wings, like the record release of Wings Over America. And whatever, Capitol invited everybody on the label. And there's all these people there that Paul doesn't know and can't talk to of this older generation. And then Dean comes and was like, hey, how you doing? Yeah. And they just completely, like, he could talk to anybody. He could,
my understanding of Dean Martin was he was the guy that like Frank Sinatra and Jerry Lewis always wished they could be.
Yeah, that was the story.
He was the
everybody
one that could
wanted
relax.
Yeah.
The only one who could relax.
Yeah, everybody wanted to be Frank except Frank. Frank wanted to be Dean.
Right.
And it's funny because Dean Martin would tell a joke, then Frank Sinatra would tell it, and it would sound like a threat.
Yeah.
Knock, knock.
Yeah. It was that whole thing of like Dean Martin would famously walk out and look at the audience and go, like Dean had this shtick that he was drunk all the time. That became his shtick. And he would walk out and look at the audience and go, how'd you guys get into my room? Ha ha.
Yeah.
But if you listen to Frank Sinatra live at the Sands, you go, how'd you get into my room? No, it's not how you do it.
Yeah.
And the point about 76 was you had this giant group of people.
Yeah.
There were comedians, Johnny Carson, Bob Hope, Dean Martin, Alan King, Don Rickles, all these guys.
Sammy.
Sammy.
Instead, the last time they were still relevant.
Last time they're still relevant, it was just before they realized that there were people behind them waiting to take their place.
Now also, just contextually, you had in like 72, 73, 74, I believe, that's when George Carlin started to become hot. That's when, right?
72 was Carlin's
prior,
peak,
Cheech and Chong. And 75 was when Saturday Night Live kind of redefined what comedy and entertainment was. So to a lot of people, Jerry Lewis had really kind of become a joke.
Yeah. In fact, there's a really great story. And, it was a slow starting thing.
Yeah.
In 1970, he released the movie Which Way to the Front. He made the movie Cinderfella, which is a gender switch on Cinderella. And it came, and he wrote it and produced it and directed it. And he thought it was the best work he'd ever did. And Paramount wants to release it in the summer. And he goes, no, this is too good, because back then summer was where you kind of dumped movies. And Jerry said, I want this to be released at Christmas. And now we're in January of 61. And Paramount says, no, we can't release it for Christmas. We need something. We need it for summer. And Jerry said, if I give you another movie for the summer, will you release this at Christmas? And they said, yeah, but it's January. And he went to Miami
and did the Bellboy.
Yeah.
Like improvised this movie.
In the hotel
Bellboy,
where he was performing.
in the hotel, and he would do 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And he filmed the movie and did 2 shows a night.
And also only speaks at the end.
Yeah, he has
it's
no
all
lines.
physical comedy.
He has no lines in the movie.
Yeah.
It's all physical comedy. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's one of my earliest memories is that movie.
Seeing
When
the
he's-
Bellboy?
When he's in the showroom conducting, there's that bit.
And it's an amazing movie to see.
Yeah.
He only talks at the end of it.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
It's brilliant. And he kind of riffed it. So he's that big. And then within 10 years, the bloom is off the rose.
Right.
In 1970, the counterculture is coming along. He seems out of step. He seems irrelevant. All of those guys don't understand what's going on. They don't really get the counterculture of the late 60s, early 70s. Jerry Lewis makes this World War II comedy called Which Way to the Front. It's in the theater for 3 days, bombs. Warner Brothers pulls it and puts in this other movie they have that they hope will make money, a little documentary called Woodstock.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just one of those things like, oh.
Oddly, the assistant editor on Woodstock, a young Martin Scorsese, who would later do King of Comedy.
That's right. And created the traveling mat to paint out a rock of blow wedged in Neil Young's nostril.
There you go.
Or that's in The Last Waltz.
But even if you like probably all of us were into George Carlin and Cheech and Chong and something.
Right.
If you liked that kind of entertainment that Jerry Lewis or Sammy Davis Jr. delivered, it was like, man, in the mid 70s, they could still really
they were
it.
at their peak. Yeah.
And I would go see them as a kid, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's the interesting thing. You grew up.
I spent a lot of time in Vegas.
With your folks.
Because my dad did fixtures for department stores and we had carte blanche at the Sands. So I was there when all of that was going on.
And you were like
8.
But you were basically the prince of the Sands, but literally the prince of the Sands.
Yeah,
I just imagine
you
you
golf cart. I had a pool uniform, like a pool guy uniform. It was crazy. And
I just imagine 8 years old, Brill cream hair, smoking,
questionable lady on each arm.
Showgirls.
I was
Multiple feet
also
higher.
wearing the tuxedo with shorts all the time.
But you didn't you swim with Sammy Davis Jr.'s kids or the
Altavis Davis babysat me.
Right.
I hung out with his kids, and I got to go to the shows, even though I was a kid.
May Britt's kids, the
Karen and I can't remember. I guess
Tracy.
it would be yeah.
Ben Stiller learned how to swim in Las Vegas and was taught to swim by the Pips.
Wow.
Because his parents were opening for Gladys Knight and the Pips at the whatever hotel, and he would go in the pool, and the Pips taught him to swim. But Ben told us it was really sweet. He goes, "That's how I grew up. I thought the Pips taught everybody how to swim."
hilarious.
That's so sweet.
The 70s were also the peak of the cheesy variety show era. So you had the Donnie and Marie, and you had Cher and Sonny and Cher and Tom Jones, and those shows were perfect for the Jerrys and the Deans and the whatevers.
And it was that school of comedian, and Jerry is the king of it, but also Sammy.
Yeah.
And then they would get deadly serious because both Jerry and Sammy had been in show business since they were children. So at a certain point, you have to realize that their maturing process calcifies in a way that they're emotionally teenagers, and they get dramatic and narcissistic the way teenagers do. And they would get that, can I be serious now? That was the only way they could really do that.
My favorite one was Sammy was on the Jerry Lewis show because Jerry had a talk show.
Yes.
Briefly.
And they're on YouTube, and to see Jerry Lewis interview William Shatner
about movie making is fantastic.
Is like seeing someone get struck by lightning and turned into two people, and then they get into a conversation.
I actually own all episodes of that I stole when I was a PA from the Masters, and Jerry and Shatner call it the process, and they say the process 37 times.
What's also amazing about it is that Jerry Lewis is Andy Richter. Mm-hmm. Is Charlie Callis, who was just the poor man's Jerry Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
yes.
It's like, who's exactly like me, but not as good on every level?
Yeah.
Charlie Callis.
And treated that way the entire
By the way, when you say that, at that first dinner we had with him at the Italian restaurant, at some point, Shecky Green walked in and was across the room, and Jerry Lewis points at Shecky Green and goes, greatest lounge comic of all time. Now, for years,
Yes,
I
know,
thought it was a
weird
huge backhanded compliment.
compliment.
Somebody, another comedian later told me years later, like, oh no, that for Jerry Lewis to be a lounge comic was to call someone a lounge comic was a great honor. But it did sound like
but it is. I get that. Like these guys all came from vaudeville and music hall, and
and
they
sounded like an insult.
It did sound like an insult, and I love that. I have nothing to do with it at all. But as you get older, you realize like how they would not put on their pants until just before they went on stage to keep them pressed. Like there's that school went away in the 60s. Like the people that we loved as kids were the reaction to that.
Right.
George Carlin would walk on stage in a t-shirt and jeans, and it was a reaction to Don Rickles having his pants off until just before he's introduced, and then he puts them on so they don't wrinkle.
They come from miles to enjoy our intermission.
Casper Mattress is that outrageously comfortable mattress you've probably heard about a million times on podcasts. But it does live up to the hype. Now, I have to tell you, I once had a friend of mine describe a comfortable mattress as sleeping in the palm of God. I don't want to get religious here. Let's just say it's like sleeping in King Kong's palm after he fell asleep with his hand in a bucket of warm water. Buying a Casper mattress is easy. You order online, and it's delivered to your door in a compact box with free shipping and free returns. It's available in the U.S., Canada, and now in the United Kingdom. Considering we spend 1/3 of our lives on a mattress, it's so important to truly sleep on a mattress before committing. That's why Casper gives you 100 nights to try it out. Here's a special offer for listeners of the Dana Gould Hour. Get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting Casper.com/Dana and using the promo code Dana. And yes, since you asked, terms and conditions apply. His mother was in labor for 4 days. At the time, doctors used ether as an anesthetic, and they had to use so much of it that by the time he emerged from his mother's ether-drenched bloodstream, young Jerome Levitch was whacked out of his skull. He was literally born stoned and slept for several days. They were worried he wouldn't wake up, and the doctors wanted to perform a spinal tap, which at the time, 1926, was a risky procedure under the best of circumstances, much less on a newborn. But his grandmother forbade it, and 2 days later, he woke up in her arms. He was basically raised by his grandmother. Born in a Russian Jewish enclave in Newark, New Jersey, Jerome's parents, Daniel and Rachel Levitch, were what were known as trunkers, traveling vaudevillians, taking their act to music halls and vaudeville theaters all across the eastern seaboard. Their only child was only with them in between gigs and during prolonged engagements in the hotels of the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York, what was then known as the Borscht Belt, because of the preponderance of Eastern European Jews like Danny and Rachel Levitch. Young Jerome spent his summers in the hotels at the Catskills, and by 15, he had developed what was then called a record act, where he would lip-sync to a popular record of the day, only the way Jerome Levitch, who by then had changed his name to Jerry Lewis, did it. The recording was wacky and crazy with the faces and the mugging, and a career was launched. Jerry had a heart murmur and a perforated eardrum, which qualified him as unsuitable for military service in World War II, or what was then called Classification 4F, and young Jerry devoted his life to performing. Jerry dropped out of Irvington High School in the 10th grade and became a full-time performer, traveling all over the eastern seaboard, from New York City to the Catskill Mountains to the Atlantic City Boardwalk. Remember, this was before television and nightclubs were huge. In 1945, Jerry met and befriended a crooner named Dino Crecchetti, who had changed his name to Dean Martin. The two became very close friends and within a year had combined their talents into an act of sorts. It basically consisted of Dean trying to sing and Jerry making that act impossible. It was mindless, it was brainless, it was ridiculous, and to a nation in shell shock in the immediate aftermath of World War II, it was just what the doctor ordered. Martin and Lewis exploded. Their partnership lasted 10 years to the day, in which time they broke nightclub attendance records like dry twigs. They had a radio show, several television shows, and made 17 movies, most, if not all of them, hits. As a team, they were a match made in heaven. They were so perfectly complementary of each other's abilities, so in sync with each other's processes. And nowhere is their effortless repartee better illustrated than in this outtake from their attempts at recording a radio commercial for their then upcoming film, The Caddy. Remember, this is an outtake, as will soon become obvious.
You'll love Jerry and me in The Caddy.
Take my word for it, The Caddy is the most hilarious picture we've ever made. Come on and join the fun. See Paramount's The Caddy.
Yeah, The Caddy. Is that all right, you cocksucker?
How was that, you shitheel?
Without reading it?
I'm with you.
Okay. Next, you still rolling?
Still rolling?
All right, start.
You can cut that bit out.
Come on and join the fun. See Paramount's The Caddy. Yeah. It'll make you shit.
Cut out make. You ready? You ain't doing a fucking thing. You're just standing there. This is Dean Martin.
And Jerry Lewis with him. We will even fail, you cocksuckers.
This is Religious Martin and Jerry Lewis. Well, there's 5 fucking lines. We can't get through it. This is Dean Martin.
And Jerry Lewis with a reminder to see our newest and funniest motion picture ever, The Caddy.
Oh, he's right, folks. Come on and join the fun in the most wonderful 90 minutes of howls and gags you ever saw.
We'll be seeing you in Paramount's The Caddy.
Yep, The Caddy.
With a big cock on it.
Over time, Jerry began to eclipse Dean in the duo. In the first draft of their film Three Ring Circus, Dean did not appear until page 32, a full half hour into the 90-minute movie. At one point, Look magazine did a cover story on the two, but cropped Dean out of the picture. Tensions continued to build. Their last performance together was July 25th, 1956. Their first performance together? July 25th, 1946. And that's, well, you do the math. In 1952, Martin and Lewis were, among many, many, many other things, serving as hosts of NBC's Colgate Comedy Hour. At the time, a member of the crew had a child suffering from a then little-known musculoskeletal malady called muscular dystrophy. Muscular dystrophy, very broadly, is a cluster of diseases that work in concert and result in the decay and atrophy of muscle mass. Jerry Lewis became a passionate advocate for MDA research. But it wasn't until 1966 that the Jerry Lewis Labor Day Telethon, as it came to be known, was established. And from 1966 to about 2010, the end of summer and the onset of the school year was always signaled by the arrival of Jerry Lewis and his well-meaning, if sweaty and crazy, Labor Day Telethon. For close to 24 hours, starting on Friday night, Jerry would host a non-stop variety show interrupted hourly by screens of Tympani, in which a drum roll would signal a new total. And from 1966 on, throughout the ups and downs of Jerry's career, the telethon was always there. And ups and downs meant ups and downs. Jerry did nothing small. When he was big, and when, like Icarus, he flew too close to the sun, the fall was brutal. After Dean and Jerry broke up, Jerry and his wife holed up inside of his house. Like Paul McCartney after the breakup of the Beatles, a story I will tell here one day, probably soon, because I also find it fascinating, Jerry felt like he had it all and threw it away and did not know what to do with his life. Jerry and his wife Patty went to Las Vegas for a vacation, and that's Jerry Lewis. He's not sure if he can perform anymore, so he goes on a vacation to Las Vegas. And while in Las Vegas, he received a frantic phone call from Sid Luft. Who is Sid Luft? Judy Garland's husband. Judy was performing in Vegas, but she had strep throat. She couldn't sing. Jerry, could you fill in? Jerry went on stage in front of 1,000 people for the first time in 10 years without Dean Martin at his side, not knowing what to do or say. He cracked some jokes. He clowned around. He sang Rockabye My Baby and Come Rain or Come Shine. He got through the show and knew he'd be okay. As proof, Capitol Records heard the recording of the show and asked Jerry to record a musical album, Jerry Lewis Just Sings. It went to number 3 on the Billboard charts and sold 1.5 million copies. Jerry signed a contract with the Sands Hotel to perform regularly, appearing in his own solo television specials on NBC, and for the first time, starred in his first film as a solo star.
Delicate is really the word for Jerry, the funniest delinquent who ever made the Rogues Gallery.
The Delicate Delinquent, co-starring a pre-Carl Kolchak Darren McGavin, came out in 1957 and was a big hit. And it was followed by The Sad Sack, Rockabye Baby, The Geisha Boy, and on and on and on and on. Along the way, Jerry became the co-writer, producer, and director of his movies. And then, starting in 1966, every Labor Day, the telethon. And as we've said, with Jerry, some things got weird, and some things got dark.
For I am muscular dystrophy, the hater of people, especially children. and I dare you to stop me. It will take more money, more time, more science, and more love than you have yet been willing to give. Yes, I am muscular dystrophy. I hate people, especially children, and I dare you to stop me. I dare you.
One night in 1965, while performing in Las Vegas, Jerry did a pratfall off a piano that chipped his spine, and that sent Jerry into a lifelong struggle with chronic pain. He took Percodan for it, and then, as happens over time, started taking 2 Percodan for it, and on and on and on, until he was taking 13 Percodan for it. For over a decade, his Percodan addiction clouded his judgment, warped his personality, and at one point drove him to contemplate suicide. But nothing slowed his output. Jerry Lewis starred in 2 to 3 movies every year from 1949 to 1970. Most of them hits. It wasn't until the very, very late 60s that the bloom came off the rose. As the counterculture took hold, Jerry Lewis and his peers started to fall out of favor. As the baby boom generation came of age, naturally, they wanted stars of their own. Oddly, it was right around this time that Jerry Lewis's son Gary became a star in his own right. It's interesting, Jerry's dad Danny wanted to be a star, but he never made it. Jerry became a huge star, and it never sat well with Jerry's dad. And then Gary, Jerry's son, became a star, and it never quite sat well with Jerry. But Gary Lewis and the Playboys were a huge pop band in the late 60s.
This diamond ring doesn't shine for me anymore, and this diamond ring doesn't mean what it meant before. So if you got someone whose love is true, let it shine for you.
That's Jerry Lewis's son, Gary, at the time giving Jerry just a little taste of what he must have put his dad through. In 1970, Jerry's World War II comedy, Which Way to the Front, bombed and was pulled from theaters after only 3 days. Warner Brothers, its studio, replaced it with a newly completed documentary called Woodstock, and Jerry decided he'd had enough and stopped making movies. In America. 2 or 3 telethons and countless Percodan later, Jerry became enticed by a script by a woman named Joan O'Brien called The Day the Clown Cried. The Day the Clown Cried is the story of a clown in Germany during World War II who is arrested for mocking Hitler and is sent to a concentration camp. He's allowed to live if he performs for the children in the camp, eventually, like the Pied Piper, leading the children into the gas chamber. Other stars had been offered The Day the Clown Cried: Bobby Darin, Milton Berle, and Dick Van Dyke. They all passed. Finally, its producer, Nat Vosberger, offered Jerry the chance to star in the film as well as to direct, with complete financial backing. But the film didn't work. The writer, Joan O'Brien, who collaborated with Charles Denton, said that the original draft featured a clown named Carl Schmidt, who was a real bastard, and the story was about the redemption of a terrible person. Jerry reworked the script, changing the character's name to Helmut Dork and making the story itself a Chaplin-esque dark comedy, Jerry's take on the great dictator. Whatever he was thinking, in his admitted Percodan haze, it didn't come together. And The Day the Clown Cried, having been seen by only a few people, and oddly, I know 2 of them, is the tip-top peak of Mount What Was He Thinking? Even Jerry didn't like it.
Are we going to get to see The Day the Clown Cried?
No. No. And in terms of that film, I was embarrassed. I was ashamed of the work, and I was grateful that I had the power to contain it all and never let anybody see it. It was bad, bad, bad.
But it didn't stop Jerry Lewis. He continued performing live, taking Percodan, and every year, a telethon. One of the great maxims of show business is, if you just stay in there long enough, everything circles back around. And in 1982, Martin Scorsese cast Jerry in the ahead-of-its-time meditation on fame, King of Comedy, where Jerry Lewis played, basically, Jerry Lewis. And he's amazing. King of Comedy led to a resurgence in Jerry's career. Things picked up. They were great. And then they weren't. The movies Jerry made after King of Comedy were a mixture of misfires and head-scratchers. He did kick Percodan, but the pain persisted. He suffered from prostate cancer, diabetes, and pulmonary fibrosis. For the pulmonary fibrosis, he was treated with prednisone, which caused him to gain a tremendous amount of weight, to the point that for a couple of years there, he was largely unrecognizable. But still, he persisted. And every year a telethon. And then, even that got weird. As the 21st century dawned, a large number of people with muscular dystrophy began to resent the telethon. They called themselves Jerry's orphans, refusing to be labeled Jerry's kids, as children with MDA were referred to in the fundraising. They proclaimed, quite rightly, that the telethon relied on an outmoded 1950s mindset for fundraising, and they didn't like being held up as objects to be pitied. Jerry, now in his late 80s, responded somewhat unelegantly by saying, "You don't want to be pitied because you're a cripple in a wheelchair? Stay in your house." Times change. Television viewing habits change. Attitudes change. And in 2010, the MDA announced the telethon would be cut back from 21 hours to 6. The next year, they announced Jerry would not host the show, but would appear at the end to sing his signature closer, "You'll Never Walk Alone." Regrettably, he and the telethon's producers could not come to an agreement on terms, and he released a statement that he would not appear and that he and the Muscular Dystrophy Association were parting ways. The last telethon was broadcast in 2014. Part of the reason the association cited for discontinuing the program was that the success of the Ice Bucket Challenge for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis proved that fundraising means had evolved. Jerry Lewis starred in one last film, 2013's Max Rose. He died in August 2017 of cardiovascular disease. Jerry Lewis.
With the laughing and the pathos and the long life that ended.
Great story if it ends there, right? Well, it does. But it doesn't have to for you. Let's say you want to watch The King of Comedy, or The Bellboy, or The Caddy, or any one of 100 movies Jerry Lewis appeared in. Or read his book, Dean and Me. Or read his ex-wife Patty's book, I Laughed Till I Cried. Oh, lots of good stuff in that. In any event, doing this is easy. Visit the library page at danagould.com, where all of these items are featured with easy links. While you're there, you'll see options to donate to the show or subscribe through PayPal. Every cent goes back into the show. Please know, we appreciate what, if anything, you can do. But that's not all. You can also visit our store at comedyfilmnerds.com for Bevilacqua Heating and Air Conditioning t-shirts, Dana Gould Hour t-shirts, signed vinyl copies of Funhouse, Let Me Put My Thoughts in You, and I Know What's Wrong, signed CDs and DVDs, all signed by me, just in time for your pre-Halloween shopping.
Make sure you get yours and enjoy it now.
Ice cream bars. It's the handy way to enjoy smooth, rich, creamy ice cream. Get some.
Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn gorilla.
Bela Lugosi finds the perfect subject to turn a gorilla into a goof, and vice versa.
Look, what are you trying to tell me? I don't understand a word. What am I, dumb or something? Don't answer that.
The film stars Bela, and if you weren't paying attention, you would swear it also starred Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. It was 1952. They were at the height of their fame, cranking out movies. But in fact, it is the Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin look, sound, and act-alike comedy team of...
Duke Mitchell and Sammy Petrillo.
Who?
Duke Mitchell and Sammy Petrillo.
Bela Lugosi and the freakishly Martin and Lewis-esque comedy team of Duke Mitchell and Sammy Petrillo. And who better to tell us that story than our own Scott Alexander?
Fantastic story. Sammy was, I'm going to say he was 16, maybe 17, but I'll say 16. He gets a haircut, and his friends go, "Oh my God, you look just like Jerry Lewis," who at the time is the biggest comedy star in the world. And you cannot overstate how big Jerry was.
This is at a time when there's no modern analogy to how big,
how multimedia
he was at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
And there would be people outside the hotels waiting for it. I mean, he was gigantic.
You know, I'm trying to think of who in show business now you could even equate to that level of fame. There isn't.
I mean, Michael Jackson at his prime.
Yeah, really, like Michael Jackson at his prime. Michael Jackson in 1985.
Madonna, Justin Bieber, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, but it was like Jerry Lewis was that big.
Sammy, he's a New York kid. He goes and buys a weekly variety, and he reads that Milton Berle is in. I hope I'm getting the story right. He reads that Milton Berle is in town rehearsing a show. Sammy crashes the theater, gets himself backstage, and he does a Jerry impression for Berle. Berle is blown away. He says, "Oh, Jesus Christ, he looked just like him." And he picks up a phone and he calls Jerry, who is at some hotel. And he basically gets Jerry in a room with Sammy. And Jerry just cannot believe this. And it really...
Jerry loves it.
Jerry loves it. It is uncanny. Their TV show, the Colgate Variety Hour, I think it was, playing a younger version of himself. And it's a small bit, and the audience goes crazy. And per the stories, Jerry doesn't quite like how good it goes over.
I would imagine.
and Sammy's the thing is, even, my God, I mean, Jerry was so young when he became star. I mean, Jerry's probably 25 or 26 at the time.
Yeah.
Sammy's 16. They're both pretty young guys, but Jerry sort of says, "All right, well, the bit was funny, but you're done." Sammy ends up being picked up by a very, 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 very low-budget Hollywood producer named Jack Broder, who's sort of a manager-producer who figures out he can do a fake Martin and Lewis movie. He finds a singing Italian guy.
Duke Mitchell.
Not
Everyone knows that.
Not Dean Martin, Duke Mitchell.
Yeah.
The exact same initials.
No one knows who Sammy Petrillo is. Everyone knows who Duke Mitchell is.
And they basically come out to Hollywood, and they first they hit the nightclub circuit, and Sammy's high school age, and then they make this movie. Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla, and again, ladies and gentlemen, just go to YouTube. Even the trailer. The trailer is actually a really good greatest hits of the movie. Sammy's Jerry is uncanny.
Yeah.
And the problem was that most audiences who saw the trailer, saw the movie, probably thought they were looking at Jerry Lewis.
Yeah.
It really is hard to tell the difference.
And when you go to YouTube and look at Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla, it is freakish that you're not looking at Jerry Lewis, and that this guy who's just so blatantly doing Jerry Lewis that there was no way to copyright a persona.
But Lewis blows a gasket.
I mean, as well he should.
and he's also he's the biggest, he's Paramount's biggest money maker.
Yeah.
I mean, they are such a big deal, and there's a lot of stories.
It would be like in 1966 a band came about called The Other Beatles, and it was just...
Yes. And so depending on which version of the story you go with, Lewis tries to have the negative burned before the film is released, or Lewis puts in a call to Hal Wallace, who calls up Jack Broder, who produced the Cheapo movie, and says, "All right, how much to kill your film? How we want to throw it into a furnace."
Yeah,
and there's a lot of haggling and fuck you kind of things that go down, and finally the movie gets released, and nobody really sees the movie. And then Sammy just sort of gets blacklisted, and then Sammy can't get work. And Sammy is, for the era, is a very just, funny, burlesque kind of comedian.
Well, he's doing Jerry Lewis. I mean, it's basically he can't, if any nightclub wants to maybe gets a chance of booking Jerry Lewis, is not going to book this kid who's doing an imitation of him.
Yeah, you do have to come up with your own thing.
At the end of the day, there's a limited market.
And Sammy really just gets a couple more gigs, and then he ends up most notoriously working a day on a Doris Wishman nudist camp movie.
That's right.
in the 70s, and then that's really his career.
And now, on with the show.
I wonder how much, if I get a pie graph, like a USA Today pie graph, how much time of my life in that pie graph is spent with me wondering what people who weren't thinking about me were thinking about me.
And then you can dwell on how much time you've wasted on that pie graph.
So much time up your own ass.
Doesn't it? That's the biggest weight on my
ass.
shoulders is time. It's like, how much time have I squandered? Because I know a decade I squandered. I know when I started working for the Improv that somebody went, don't get too deep into this because this isn't what you should be doing. And next thing you know, I'm an assistant manager, then I'm a GM, and then I'm stuck in there financially. It could have been 50 times worse because my first job was at a grocery store, and I kept going, I can hardly wait to become a cashier so I can buy a Toyota truck like everyone else.
I knew a guy that quit college
to become a cashier,
to work at a grocery store because his goal in life was to have a Trans Am or a Camaro. I think it was a Camaro. His goal in life was to have a Camaro with a great stereo. And he was in college. He was not 11.
Part of me thinks that's funny, and part of me is jealous. I wish that was my goal, and I wish I would get hit in the head, and I'm just dumber. Like, I wish I could just be like, this is fun. This is fun. Life is good. Oh, look at trees, dogs. There's a dog. I'm dead serious.
Yeah,
I'm dead serious. I would gladly trade freaking out over nothing and feeling like pain and just being angry all the time. Unwarranted, uneducated, based on nothing. It's just like my political arguments are uneducated. And I resort to lowest common denominator, like F you and you're a piece of shit. And I have no argument.
Yeah, that's not an argument.
But I don't even have one.
It's like chewing through a tree. I'm going to get to the point where you think you're going to die. You're in Death Valley.
Yeah. Well, it's happened a bunch of times, but this last trip I drove out there.
Captain Kirk's chair is in the sand.
Yeah. Well, that was the first thing I did.
What's the temperature?
122.
Okay. 122 degrees.
Yeah.
You're in the middle of Death Valley.
Yeah.
And Death Valley, by the way, there's no call boxes.
There's no cell phone coverage. Well, the first time I went out there was just one of my anxiety nervous breakdown trips. And I left from Orange County, and I used to drive to Vegas. I would check into the Hilton, get super drunk, and I would take the monorail to the end of the strip and drink my way back to my hotel. I wasn't Nicolas Cage. It was like one martini. I'm drunk, and then I'd get another one, and then I get back to the hotel and I have a third one, and then I go to bed and wake up and drive home. And that was a fantastic trip. Right. And I would just people watch and I would record. But, I took a left at Baker and went into Death Valley, and I realized like 2 hours into it, I've got no cell phone coverage. I'm staring at the temperature gauge on my car with 300,000 miles on it. This is 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I discovered a place that sort of changed my life in an inspirational way. It would look like an abandoned building, and I was going to break in and take pictures. It turns out it's a place called Death Valley Junction, population 3. I've since befriended everyone who lives out there, a couple of generations, but there's a place called the Amargosa Opera House out there, which they eventually let me into, and I've been there many times. I actually did shows out there. A woman broke down there. I'm sorry I'm rambling so much, but I want to get this out of the way to explain my enthusiasm. This woman, who was a professional ballet dancer from New York, broke down there in 1966 and decided to spend her life there painting and dancing for the rest of her life, which she did. She just died 6 months ago. I've met her and hung out with her at least 10 times. I've dragged probably 50 people out there. The Opera House is one of my favorite locations on the planet. Population 3, there's nothing. There's no gas stations, no restaurants. 37 miles away is the nearest place to get food. There's nothing. And I'm obsessed with this place for a lot of reasons. Not just the fact.
Amargosa Opera House.
Yeah, that's the exterior of it. Wow. But that's the inside that she painted solely by herself.
Oh my Christ.
In a well over 100-degree temperature. Every time I go out there, something exciting happens. I run into these giant packs of wild horses, and every time I go out there, something cool happens.
That's phenomenal. Now, how far away from LA?
That's not far. That's an hour and a half from Baker. And 30 minutes from that is a place called Furnace Creek, which is this fantastic resort. And it's just in the middle of nowhere. There's all this stuff out there. There's a volcano out there that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. There's not much in there because that's a new phone.
Did you map the sky in, or is that the real sky?
Oh, totally real sky. The cow. I became obsessed with Death Valley and Death Valley Junction. Granted, it's just an escape mechanism for me, but it's so much. The vibe out there is just better than like the deserts out by Palm Springs, which give me the creeps, frankly, because it seems like it's a meth head maven.
It is a meth head maven.
Yeah. Oh, that's what it's like. I'm out there. I walked into a bowling alley and I was like, I clearly don't belong here. And they're looking at me like, oh, City Slicker came down here with your video camera. And
we shot a movie called Southbound not too far from Palm Springs.
Yeah. Joshua Tree or something?
Yeah, like out by Palm Desert. And, you're just out there. But we're out there at this, house out in the off the beaten track. And you just...
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
have you driven through Salton Sea or Slab City?
No, I haven't. I really want to
do it in the day and do it with friends. And I don't think it's unsafe, but don't go alone like I do every time where somebody confronts me and I'm like, this is it. I'm dying. I had a woman block me in recently with her truck, a giant woman, and she goes, "I saw you taking pictures of my kids," and I went, "No, I didn't. I saw you back there. Give me your camera." I went, "Hey, I'm not giving you my camera." Right. I was scared shitless.
Yeah.
I go, "I'm not giving you my camera." She goes, "Give me your camera," and I go, "What am I going to do?" She's giant. There's all these other people around. And she had me blocked in. And I was just like, the best thing to do is show her my camera. Because, of course, I didn't take pictures of her kids. And she went through every picture and she apologized. And I was like,
she apologized?
Yeah. She goes, I go, "No, I was taking pictures of the building that fell in the water." She goes, "I thought you were taking pictures of my kids." I'm like, "No. Why do I want to take pictures of..." Oh, well, you know what I mean? I don't want people in the pictures ever.
Right.
I mean, I specifically used to shoot pictures of Disneyland.
That's amazing that she apologized.
Yeah. But she was wrong. She looked through all the pictures. And it was just all of this building that had fallen into the Salton Sea. But by the way, there's a movie. You may have seen it, but it fantastically and perfectly sums up Salton Sea called Plagues and Pleasures of the Salton Sea. And it's narrated by John Waters. And I believe it's on Amazon Video right now.
Plagues and Pleasures of the Salton Sea. Wow.
But it completely sums up Salton Sea. The good, the bad, the catastrophe of it. But the people is the most fascinating part because I drive around there for hours and I see maybe one person. There's a lot of those places that have wide open space, especially out in Death Valley, but you can find it out here too. Yeah. Have you been to the Integratron?
The Integratron?
Yeah. It's a sound bath. It's a dome and it's in Joshua Tree. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of creepy and it's successful. It's you pay like $50 to go in there and sit in silence in this dome that was built in the 50s. And it looks like a spaceship and they have all this extraterrestrial information around it.
Oh no.
And it's booked up 2 or 3 months in advance. Cause every time I think I'm going to make a day trip out there and do it and talk about it for the podcast, it's always full, but it's beautiful. It's fantastic. As long as you get the hell out of there. Like every place I go.
Yeah, like 29 Palms knows, but I love those places.
I think you would be fascinated by Salton Sea in an uncomfortable way because it's a combination of kind of heartbreaking because there's people still living there. Okay, you're driving around. It's nothing.
What was the Salton Sea? For those
it was a resort town.
For those people who don't know.
It was a beautiful giant lake and they thought it was going to be Palm Springs on the water. It's about an hour from Palm Springs. And it was a resort town in the 50s with these huge, flourishing, thriving marinas, and it was movie stars and people, Frank Sinatra's and all these people, and they built all these houses out there, and then the water became polluted, over salinated, I believe, and nothing can live in it. It's got botulism every year where 100,000 fish and birds die, and they have to just drive around the lake and pick them up. You go out there now and you look out over this, you can smell it from 10 miles away. It smells like the ocean, but way, way stronger, obviously because of the salt. But you look at this beautiful, enormous body of water, and there's nothing happening. No people, no boats. Probably 1 out of 10 houses is inhabited. The rest are burned down and graffitied. And you just drive around, you go, someone still lives right there. So there's some guy that lives right there. And then you make a turn, and then there's like a young girl walking down the street who's attractive. You're like, what is she doing here?
Isn't it also a lot of it a dry lake bed?
No. I haven't seen anything dry out there except for this is the truth. You walk along the beach and you're like, this sand is weird. And then you look a little closer and you realize it's millions and millions and millions of fish bones. This is what I perceive as sand now. Millions, or billions possibly. It's all dead fish. There's dead fish everywhere at certain parts of the year. Thousands of them everywhere.
Because it's over salinated water.
And everything dies and there's botulism. And the birds eat the fish and they get it and they spread it around, and then the wildlife people.
There's no... What do those people do?
I have no idea. I imagine it's a lot of people living on welfare, I would assume.
Here's a story about somebody we know, and I don't know if it's true or not. A writer, comedian, checked out.
Yeah.
Liquidated what he could and lives off his Writers Guild pension, which is minimal because he only had a short period of time where he was really making writer dough. Bought a house in what was a development that got abandoned. So there's like 2 complete houses in the development, and then it's just cleared cloverleaf roads with no construction on them, somewhere up north.
Because California City's like that.
Where's
California City is out in the Mojave Desert, and it's just miles and miles of the roads with the cul-de-sacs, And the street signs and no houses.
Yeah.
Miles of it.
Yeah. That's where he lives. And his game is how cheaply can he live? Like he has a VHS player and he goes to like church basements and buys movies for like a dime on VHS.
But he lives in a structure.
He lives in a structure and
there's water and.
Yeah, I think he has his amenities and he like goes to Goodwill and buys like 40 movies for $1 on VHS and like watches 1 or 2 a night and has like a game of how inexpensively he can live.
Is there any kind of
part of me is like, that's what I should be doing.
Hey, Dana, I have watched hundreds of hours of living in a van videos thinking this is my last resort. And it's also an escape mechanism. And I fantasize about having a $150,000 Sprinter van and I just drive around and live in it.
Right.
And then when I actually meditate on it and think about it, it repulses me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be around those people. Like, I don't need this. I don't need walls. I do. I need walls in a bathroom with regular plumbing where I don't have to know what's happening.
Right.
But I do fantasize about that all the time. I fantasize about having a little place where I have no responsibility, no one can reach me, and I can just sit and think and conclude. But I'd like to think that Rick Reynolds hasn't lost his marbles and he's out there going, this is a big experiment and someday this is going to come to fruition as a great, another one-man show or something. But
yeah, I don't know. It could, by the way, could also be total bullshit. That's what I heard. Don't know if it's true or not. Doesn't belie believability. I mean, like, fits. It tracks. If it's true, it tracks.
I've known some writers that were successful that just flipped out and moved and got a job in a grocery store.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
It's non-activity activity.
Yeah.
I get that. There's a lot of people.
God, that's horrifying. This is horrifying.
Like that.
But then again, the struggle for whatever we're trying to attain, I can't.
But you also said an interesting thing before you came in that you've recently stopped taking all of your meds.
Yeah.
You stopped.
Anger problems.
Yeah. What were you taking?
I don't know. I think it was. What
do you mean you don't know?
I don't know my zip code. And I'm not trying to be a weird eccentric guy. I just never bothered looking at it and I don't get mail there. And I've lived there over 3 years.
Well, you know what you're taking.
No, I don't. In fact, I just took a photograph of it because a doctor friend got really mad at me for not knowing. And I said, I'll send you a picture of the prescription. I may have deleted it, but there was a picture of it in
If
here.
I told you its name, would you know it?
Nope.
I will say this. I take pills and they make my life much better.
No, I'm laughing at that. And I'm also laughing at the fact that, if you want to know who else's name, I don't know. What other information I don't know.
It's all in your phone.
Is
you're basically.
I call my therapist. I sent it to her, but I must have been on the old phone. So
you're like the Memento guy.
I've been going to AA meetings for over 5 years, and I get a lot out of it. I feel more grounded. I feel more in touch with being a person. I feel I'm much more calm. And I was just sitting in a meeting, and I honestly, out of my mouth, loudly started coming, "Will you shut the fuck up?" to somebody. And I had to leave, and I just went, I don't know what that was. It was I snapped.
It really came out?
It was somebody who I'm actually friends with who at every meeting wants to say the same story.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go like, there's been times where I'm on edge about, you're an adult man and I know who you are and I know what you do and I know you have a lot of people working for you. And the way you're falling apart in here is fucking embarrassing. Like, be a fucking man. And then, granted, what a colossal douche hypocrite I am, because I'm like, my ex-girlfriend isn't still in love with me, even though I don't want to get back together with her. But why can't she just be at my door begging me?
Oh, man. We're the same person.
I cannot believe she hasn't asked for sex since we broke up. I cannot believe it.
That never happens. That's a myth. Take it from me. That's a myth.
It's
same with a female orgasm. Believe it when I see one, pal.
Those are my favorite kind of jokes. Said with confidence and gusto.
I loved him as a little kid. Sort of turned into this love for what a whack job he was as he got older.
Mm-hmm.
So I would watch it and still loved him, but also knew that he's kind of horrible. And it's weird that maintained and I didn't turn against him or.
I love the dichotomy of, like, it didn't one of his kids kill, like, he was, if you want to read between the lines, see any interview with any of his children.
Yeah.
Like, he's clearly a monster.
Oh,
yeah,
definitely.
I think I don't know anything about his daughter, but I think his daughter, he probably had the best relationship with. And his son, yeah. When he had his daughter, he was in his 70s.
70s, yeah.
I actually used the lines in The Independent, even though he didn't do The Independent, which is his daughter came out. I was meeting with him behind a desk in London at some point, like my dance with Jerry Lewis. He got into the show Damn Yankees. So I saw him do Damn Yankees maybe 3 times. And it was a show that the audience loved, but for us to sit through Damn Yankees, it's like, oh my God. So anyway, he was doing it in London, and I remember he was staying at the top of a very old hotel. So it was like one of these hotels that definitely wasn't a hot hotel to stay in London, but this is where they could get a big space for Jerry Lewis to feel like a star in. But his daughter, who's 4 or 5, came out at the time, and he pulled a chocolate out from his desk, and he said, who do you love the most? And she said, you. And he said, who do I love the most? Me. And who am I going to marry? And she said, me. And he goes, here's a chocolate.
Oh, that's so deeply wrong.
That's Trump again. Yep. But I believe, that was his view of what a doting father was.
But there's also that weird thing, and I don't know if it's a Jewish thing, but
how dare you?
The marriage thing. Well, the reason I say this is Gary Shandling used to tell it was a story and a joke. I was told my psychiatrist that my mother used to say, that she was going to marry me, or I used to tell my mother I was going to marry her. And when I told my psychiatrist, I've never seen a guy do this before, he just wiped his hands like a dealer.
Hilarious. But the big difference on that note that Steve brings up is if you're Jerry hosting the telethon, and there was always that angry energy, like he became sweatier and greasier, and his bow tie became looser.
He started to look like a furious pot sticker.
Yeah, it was like Tom Jones's weird uncle was appearing, and he was sort of devolving on television, but then he would sort of sing and then collapse. But if you had Sammy Davis Jr. do the exact same telethon, he would do it with elegance, and he would look impeccable. And if you had Rickles do it, he would just be sweet and warm and humble. And Jerry, it's just like, I think he decided at some point he's going to power through everything with this anger.
But there's the craziness. The other thing that you also boiled down was like how much of that, of what we know as Jerry Lewis, was literally drugs.
Probably a large part.
Because he was jacked out of his skull on Percodan and whatever he was drinking. I'm assuming he drank for a lot of that time. And it's like, I remember I told this story before. Through the 1 million weird little things I did, I came into the orbit of Ray Manzarek of the Doors. And we were both doing a spoken word show at the Skirball Center. And we were talking. And I love being able to say that and have it not be a lie. And he goes, here's the thing with Jim Morrison. He was terrible drunk. When he was sober, he was the smartest, sweetest Southern gentleman. He was the greatest guy. And when he was drunk, he was a monster. And what happened was, over time, he was drunk more than he was sober. And that's the story. And then he goes on stage and says, Jim was a poet, man. Like, he knew where his bread was buttered. He knew the company line. But yeah, all of those things that you look at with Jim Morrison, for whatever people who admire that sort of behavior model, he's just an alcoholic. He's just a bad drunk.
At a specific time in everybody's lives. That would not fly now because you'd have Justin Bieber. And then it was cool because it was the 60s and he was mysterious and wore leather pants and got arrested and lived up in the hills and all that other stuff. I think it's impossible to have those kind of...
Lived behind the corner store that I go to every day, which is still weird.
But you couldn't have somebody today in a Vegas lounge have the same mystique or class that the Rat Pack had. Or
no, it's just a different world.
It's totally gone, and people are more cynical. And I think that's where the Jerrys and the Rickles and the Sammys and those guys came from.
Yeah, and the best depiction of it is just go on YouTube and look at the old roasts.
Oh yeah,
like they all know each other. They're all friends, and it was just a different school and stuff you can't do now. Like what would pass for a joke, like Don Rickles would go on stage and go, "Jerry, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. You're a Jew." Mm-hmm. That's not a joke.
I think also with Jerry though, the drama was also partially an act. And I think on the telethon, I feel like he's trying to show how much he's sacrificing. At the same time as he is actually tired, he's trying to make sure you know how tired he is.
Oh, there's no question.
How hard it is to stay awake and, the great sacrifice he's making.
There's no question that even in real life, that's how he was.
But he also made a choice. Again, he chose to look a certain way. So one of my early awarenesses, if that's even a word, of Jerry was Martin Short's impression of Jerry on SCTV. But I didn't know who Jerry was. So I sort of reverse engineered my way into Jerry. And he was that, like you were doing, sort of butterscotch chewing, hair slicked back, pontificating, weird dude.
Martin Short changed a lot of how people saw him, because before that, the only Jerry Lewis impression was the big hey. Yeah. But Martin Short was the first person who sat down and did that guy.
Yeah. And then my first window into Jerry's craziness was a friend of mine named Emily Franken. Her dad is an actor named Steve Franken, who everybody would know from being on Bewitched. But he was a friend of Jerry's. And Jerry convinced him one year to come on the telethon and do a piece that Jerry had written, which was basically Steve portraying muscular.
Yes. Oh, I didn't know you knew the origin.
Yeah,
I didn't know you knew the origin.
Oh,
of that.
yeah. So Steve didn't want to do it.
Muscular
Oh, yeah.
dystrophy.
You can I have the tape of it somewhere.
Children.
Yes. And Jerry wrote it. He wouldn't tell Steve what it was. And Steve went out there thinking this is going to be this incredible plea from the guy who's hosting the telethon. And it's the darkest, most bizarre thing. And Jerry hung Steve out to dry, not intentionally, but then there's no coming back from basically saying you are muscular dystrophy and you're there to get your children.
People stopping you in the grocery store.
It's horrifying.
Are you muscular dystrophy? Would you sign this?
Yeah. It's an amazing performance by Steve Franken to not just go, no, I can't say this. He just sails through it. But Emily said that when he got off stage, he was shattered because he went out there thinking it's the Gettysburg Address. And then it's basically like saying how he's going to molest your kids with disease.
Right.
It's great audio.
He would be sweet to people and he would be horrible to people. And not in the way that Don Rickles always did it with humor. I mean, it was real.
But like most comedians. I mean, tremendous rage.
Tremendous rage. And when you bring up Trump, there was a lot of that just sociopathic lying.
Yes.
That he would do it on TV, but he would do it. We were sitting in his house in Vegas. Do you mind that I'm just going all over the place?
Please, no, that's all point.
Okay. So we're sitting in his house in Vegas. At this point, he's committed to doing the film The Independent, and based on his commitment and Janine's commitment, we were able to start raising money, indie money.
So just to set the stage for people, you are a writer or director, you come up with this idea.
Right.
The script is written?
The script is written. I had done Vegas Vacation. Vegas Vacation came out. It was the first time in my life I had done a film.
Working with Chevy Chase prepared you for working with Jerry Lewis.
that got bad reviews. I'm like, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to do this too. I'm going to do an independent film.
Right. Independent film is you write the script, you attach stars, and that way people invest in it and you raise money.
Right, exactly.
You go to the Brown Derby with Tor Johnson and Bela Lugosi, and you hope you can sign up a nice dentist from Oxnard.
Exactly. So,
I want the film to end with a big explosion.
At this point, Jerry is in, and I'm in Las Vegas, and he lives in Las Vegas, and he says to me, why don't you come to the house, the NFL playoffs? I got a bunch of guys coming over, and we'll watch the playoffs and we'll talk. And I get to the house, and he's the only one in his house.
Amazing. I did not know this.
So we're sitting on the couch, and he never references the fact that he said other people are coming over. There was always no irony in what he did, no sense of humor about it. But he would tell me stories during the day on the couch, told me about, when a prince of Saudi Arabia brought him like a bathtub full of caviar. And that's how he used to eat his caviar. And,
in the tub.
From a tub.
But I remember that night at dinner.
The Prince of Saudi Arabia came with a bathtub full of caviar and said,
yes.
Who do you love the most? You.
Yeah.
Who are you going to marry? You.
I'm sorry if I'm all over the map right now.
No, you're not. It's awesome.
Very discombobulated.
What I love about, I go to Al-Anon meetings. What's great about it, regardless of if you have an addiction problem or you were raised by people with addiction problems, if you're doing the steps or not, certainly if you don't believe in a higher power or you find a higher power, a very wise friend of mine once said, for a while, my higher power was a doorknob, because 9 times out of 10, a doorknob would have made better decisions.
I think I know that friend. Do I know that friend?
It's a woman.
Because I've heard that person say that.
Yeah. But you go to a room with a bunch of people who are openly admitting that they're also fucked up in ways that are similar to the way you're fucked up.
Yeah, and you want to know something?
And everybody's just quiet, and you get this community experience.
Yeah.
And nobody judges you.
Yeah.
For that alone,
I agree.
That's a great hour.
It is a great thing. And the problem, like you said earlier, the problem is me clearly, because I know for a fact, if I wake up early, if I sit for 15 or 20 minutes and try to meditate, whether I fail or succeed, and then I get some work done and I get some exercise, I can sleep that night.
Yep.
And I know that for a fact. I don't fucking do it. I know the drugs were making me calmer. I know I haven't had road rage since I started taking them years ago, and now it's back fully. But I'm not running people off the road, and I'm not physically fighting people. But I know what to do. There's a part of my brain that lacks wisdom because I know what to do. I know what to do. I know I want to accomplish this. I need to do this work to get to that point, and I just choose to not. Just like before, I knew what I had to do, and I decided I'm just going to have a martini at lunch and go take a nap, and then have another one at dinner, and then I'm going to, shoddily get through my photography work, half drunk, and then
it's that old expression. There's one thing about you know what you need to do, but to do what you know you need to do, you have to change something about yourself. And the beautiful thing about sitting in your own shit is it's warm and it's familiar and it's yours.
Somebody pointed out to me, a mutual friend of ours again, I don't know why now all of a sudden I feel like everything's a secret. And then Mystery Man X told me. It was Bob Nickman. He goes, anger is a drug. He goes, because sometimes I'll build something in my head and I'm sitting in front of my computer and I just randomly decide, this person hates me. And by the time I've gotten over the hill, my adrenaline is actually going. And I'm like, I got to get them before they get me. And fuck them. I never do. Yeah, you know what? That brings up something I wanted to ask you, because I think we share some of this. We've both have been through what we perceive to be as being fucked over and stuff. And we don't need to go through the actual facts, because just trust me, I've been taken advantage of many, many times. And you want to explode, like I'm pretty sure I'm about to get fired, and I want to explode publicly, and I want to be like, here's the Mike Carano tabloid, here's the back room, what's going on? But I don't really have the desire to do that at all. My desire is just to walk away and just be like, I didn't belong there. But have you ever seen somebody snap and explode in this business where it actually does collateral damage to people?
Oh, yeah.
Because I haven't. I've seen people flip out and go, that guy's a piece of shit, that producer's an asshole, and that person just continues on. And then they just kind of drift off.
No, I know a writer who's popped off to a network exec, and it negatively affected his career for the rest of his life. He passed away recently.
But it seems so immature, and I agree with what you said earlier. Like, you reap what you sow, and it's going to come back at you.
When you don't know what to do, it's best not to do anything.
Yeah.
That the high road has its rewards, but it comes later.
But it also instills humility that like forces it on you, like in a way that's not that I'm not.
I think it's more malicious to just go silent, because then they don't know. Like if I say fuck you, then they just go, oh, Dana hates me, and they write it off. But if I just shut down, in my mind, they're wondering, what did I do? Did he know? Does he know?
I can't shake that those kind of people work. And people accept them for that.
Yeah.
Like someone else is going to be like, well, you can do something for me, so I don't care that he did that. But aren't you surprised that more people don't kill? I'm very serious, because I've thought that I should probably kill that guy. Like, this is the time I go to jail, and I should probably kill that guy. You know, in retrospect, you look at it, you're like, that was a stupid reason to want to kill some guy.
Yeah.
Because he took credit for some stupid thing I did. Like, you must die now for doing something to protect your...
Totally.
At dinner, his wife Sam had prepared his favorite dinner, which was just a skinless, boneless chicken thighs, broiled. And he only liked dark meat chicken. And I happen to also like dark meat chicken, so we got along. So it was just like
you bonded, on a plate. Like many people, you bonded over your love of skinless, broiled dark meat chicken.
I mean, I'm trying to... Okay, it was... Yeah, so it must have been like in January, February. And he says to me, something incredible happened. And it's a table. It looks like this table we're sitting at. He says, something incredible has happened. They have discovered the cure for muscular dystrophy. And he starts getting choked up. And then he goes back to eating his chicken. And I go, wow, Jerry, that's a huge story. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. After that night when he told me that, I never heard about it again. Didn't hear it in the news. I'm looking at it in the news. He didn't announce it on Telethon. So he would just, I don't know if he would make stuff up in his mind if he thought it was true. He would always tell me about projects like you mentioned the Bellboy. He said, we're redoing it with Mike Myers. Like he would just, we're doing The Nutty Professor as a musical on Broadway. I'm going to start rehearsing in March. At first, his sociopathic behavior, that's how it presented it to me. Just with like flights of fancy.
Right.
As we raised the money for the movie, we put a cast together. We opened a production office in Burbank. And one day he called me and I said to him, we've got Janine Garofalo to be your daughter. Who's Janine Garofalo? Well, actually, she's done this, she's done that. She was just in Truth About Cats and Dogs. She was a bona fide movie star. And he said, I think Gina Davis should play my daughter. Were you with me when he said that?
No. The storm was brewing that way before.
Anyway,
but that also sounds like I bet he did know who Janine Garofalo was.
I'm sure he did, and I'll tell you why later. But in retrospect, as we were moving forward and putting the film together, Jerry was probably giving me many signals that he really didn't want to do the movie. Like, for instance, he said when it came time to actually talk about compensation, he said, I'm going to need 20% of the film. I need 20 points in the film.
20 points.
And I'm like, wow, Jerry, we're all just taking a little bit. Everybody's working for nothing, da-da-da. And he's like, I'm a star. This is my deal. So that was the first thing. Then he had me come to Vegas on my own. And he had prepared, it was just me and him behind his desk. And he wrote a 12-page typed letter that was typed obviously like an IBM Selectric in this like really big type. I had never seen this kind of type in a letter. And it started like, I am a star and what I do is tough and I don't apologize for it. And it was now he was starting to talk about the script and what the script should be. And it was like, Jerry, we're starting shooting in 3 weeks. Oh, no, we're not starting shooting. I go back to LA and I say to him on a phone call, listen, are you in or out? I got to know. And now he's yelling at me. And he says, do you want to bring your pros and I'll bring my pros and we will sit and work this out in a room? And I go, yeah. So I'm like, fuck, who am I going to bring to Vegas? So I call Rob and I say to Rob, hey, you want to come to Vegas and see Jerry Lewis and talk about the script? And Rob says, yes, very much. I do.
Couldn't say yes fast enough.
And I'm trying to think if I knew you well enough to ask you.
No, I don't think. I wouldn't have said no to that.
But it was you, me. It was Mike Wilkins, the co-writer.
I don't think Mike went with us, though. It was you and me. I remember we raced to the airport.
Didn't Kogan know Jerry Lewis somehow?
Maybe through his dad, Arnie. But
I don't remember. But it was like I brought Emmy Award people, and when I got there, his professionals were his tennis pro, his doctor.
His doctor,
his musical director,
and his musical director.
Yep.
And now we're sitting talking about making a film, and that's when he yelled at you, Rob, right?
Yes.
Yeah, just like, when you meant pros, you mean literally people who are professionals in their field.
Yeah.
You could have come with your.
But those are probably the people he trusted.
Yeah, they were his cronies. They were his.
Well,
it was his crew.
Nobody in that crew said you're wrong, Jerry.
Right.
Yeah.
He trusted because they agreed with everything he said.
Right. Now, what is Jerry Lewis's office in Las Vegas? It's hot.
It's a large.
It's hot. It's dry. It's flat. It's Las Vegas.
It's
the mid '90s. Bill Clinton is in the White House.
It's in a mini mall.
The X-Files is keeping America on the edge of its seat. I'm trying to set the scene.
Thank you. It was in a strip mall.
There's a show called Friends, and it's teaching us how to laugh.
Yeah, very much. Strip mall. I remember you walked through a narrow thing. Yeah, but a large room, lots of books, lots of pictures.
How many pictures in the room don't have Jerry Lewis in them?
I think everything.
Yeah.
But like, for instance, he's very proud of the fact that he invented the video tap.
Yeah. Well, he should be.
Yeah. And so he had the original camera with the video tap there. It was great, but also it was obviously an office frozen in time from the 60s.
Yeah.
We sat down almost like an AA meeting on folding chairs around remember, Rob, around the edge of the room.
Vividly.
That's really weird.
But do you remember when we went out there, it was in the bad part of town because we passed an In-N-Out burger and then we sort of kept going and it was like a dry industrial one-story bungalow built in the 40s.
Well, I remember when I went to the Liberace Museum, it was literally in a store in a strip mall.
Yeah.
Same kind of place exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing that caught my eye, not to
And
interrupt
the reason I went to the Liberace Museum, if you know me, I have one thing that I get up in the morning and I seek glamour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That could be another show. I could talk about an hour about the Liberace Museum.
There's a magnet in you that just must find something shiny.
Exactly.
You love it. You're like a sexual magpie.
I feel that my mother had twins. They could only raise one of us.
Mm-hmm.
The other twin was separated. The twin became known as Scott Thorson.
That's a beautiful dream.
Or as I like to call him, Scotchy Watchy.
Quick story about the Liberace Museum. I was waiting in line at the gift shop behind two older ladies. They were looking at pictures of Liberace on the wall and talking about how attractive he was. And the one lady said, "It's a shame he never married."
It is a shame he never married.
I have to give credit where credit's due. Scotchy Watchy was a really funny Eddie Murphy joke. I remember on Saturday Night Live when Scott Thorson's book came out. He goes, "I would call him Libby and he would call me Booba." And he just went like, really seriously, "Why did he call you Booba? Why wouldn't he call you Scotchy Watchy?" So funny.
The thing I remember when we walked in was you immediately saw shelves of glass clowns, crystal glass cut clowns. And then I remember on the wall, there was a gigantic photograph, probably 4x6, of a African-American hand and a white hand in a power shake, both dripping with jewelry. And the plaque underneath said, "Nuff said." And it was him and Sammy shaking hands, showing that, that they were bridging the gap of racism.
Wow, I wonder where that is.
They did.
Please.
I think of that, 2 men, 3 eyeballs.
Yeah.
Just realized something. Jerry Lewis auction.
Oh, yeah, that's going to happen soon. I want his dentures.
I stole some stuff, but I'd definitely go to that.
I almost bought his assistant's notebook at a convention once.
I just realized I saw one of his last public appearances then, because I saw him at Cinefamily
both of us.
Before the movie he just made.
Wow.
The last movie he made.
Awesome.
Max Rose.
Max Rose. And you know, he wasn't that crazy when we saw him. Yeah, he wasn't
funny
that...
and personable. He was mean to a few of the people, but in a funny way.
In a funny way. The weirdest thing he said was... He was implying that somebody was gay in a weird way. It was he didn't want to wear pants or some really strange thing. It'll come to me later.
You always do that.
But it was he doesn't put on pants. It was a really strange thing.
I believe used the word fag far after it was a welcome term to use in comedy.
And that's the other thing about that generation, that school of comedians, that there were, through today's lens, they were violent, they were so politically incorrect. But that's part of the beauty of it, is just there were no restrictions on their thought. There was no, the concept of political correctness hadn't emerged. And to see them all go like, what do you mean I can't say fag? And we're going through that again, as new rules and society changes and becomes more nuanced and awareness of diversity increases. It takes a while to catch up.
But you would wait for those on the telethon, those little like Roman candles to flare up, because no one else would do that anymore.
Yeah, they would say that. But then on the Friars Club roast of Jerry Lewis, Rex Reed is on the dais.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like everybody knew Rex Reed was gay, but they're making those. It was just it was a different era. It was just
like
a different
Sammy's
world.
experience with the Rat Pack. They all made fun of him and made racist jokes, and he
Frank
went along
Sinatra
with it.
But on the other hand, Frank Sinatra also wouldn't play a hotel where they wouldn't allow Sammy to walk in the front door.
Yeah,
that's some of the best stuff on like Hello Dummy, like classic comedy albums at that time. Rickles, in one of his long riffs, it's like he makes fun of a gay person that he does a stereotypical, and I'm on a fox hunt. This guy's on a foxhole. And, black guys sound like, "Hey, brother!" Like it's first joke theater, but the crowd goes crazy.
Yeah, well, just something, and two Mexicans in the back waiting for a truck to show up. Tell me about your dinner with Dr. Drew.
I've had many dinners with Dr. Drew. They started when he wanted to just start hanging out, which is very, very, very weird. Like he just randomly wanted to start hanging out with me. Uh-huh. And the first time he did, we have a ritual. Friday nights normally we go out to dinner. He drives from Pasadena, picks me up in Studio City. We go out for dinner, do some stuff, and then he drops me back off. It's like a little man thing. And the first time we ever did it, I was a little uncomfortable because I didn't really know him very well. And he picked me up and he goes, "What do you want to do?" And I went, "I don't know. What do you want?" That's the whole night is like a date. I don't know. What do you want to do? And we argue about it. And we end up at a restaurant and then we go to a bar for dessert and we just stand around talking about life, just bitching like you and I would do if we went out, just talking. The first time we went out, apologies first. That's not the story. First time we went out, I took him to a mutual friend's house. She was having a party I didn't want to go to because I don't really like going to parties. And I said, I might go. I don't really want to go. I certainly did not want to go to an upscale party that I don't feel comfortable at.
Right.
And I went, "Hey, you know what? Fuck it." I told him, "There's a party if you want to go." And he goes, "Let's go to the party." And we drove to Santa Monica and went to this amazing party at this girl's house where I knew they would be doing drugs and I knew there would be weird stuff going on. He didn't give a shit. He was like, "I hope there's piles of cocaine on the tables." He goes, "I hope that's what it's like." And it wasn't, but they were just kind of like, "I can't believe you brought Dr. Drew to my party." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. Weird, right? Weird. It was his idea." We're friends, obviously.
Yeah. But you crashed his anniversary dinner.
I was looking at Instagram and I saw a picture his wife posted at the beach and it was 4th of July. And I don't do things on 4th of July, mostly because I've made it real clear I think it's stupid. Like, I think fireworks are the lowest, blow things up. And I know I'm wrong. It's just my anger. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, ooh, I'm going to hit a windshield with a pole and like 50 people are going to gather around. Let's do it. Hit it.
Right.
It's just 1,000-year-old entertainment. That's not, it's just an explosion. And I saw this because I'm alone on 4th of July. She said, "Oh, I'm in Laguna Beach." I went, maybe I'll come down. She goes, "Well, we have plans. We're going to dinner and stuff." And I went, "Wait for me. I'll be there in like an hour." And if you want verification on this, you can call him and play this for him. There's nothing embellished. I drove to Laguna Beach on 4th of July. I was 30 minutes late. They were fucking in a hurry, in a rush. They had dinner reservations. We get on the city bus, take it like the tram, take it down to this kind of nice restaurant. And he has to go in and convince them that, there's a third person in our party now, and they have to make arrangements. They have to move people around. And we're sitting at a table. I'm just eating my salmon.
And you know his wife.
Yeah, but I'm just sitting. I didn't know her well then, but I'm sitting at the table going, "What's wrong?" And they're like, "Nothing." And I go, "You guys seem like you're pissed. Like you seem like you're upset. Are you having a fight or something?" "No." And I'm just eating my salmon like, I talk the entire time. And then I said, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "I've been out a lot. I've been on the road a lot and I'm working on my marriage." It's like marriage, quality time with my wife. After that, didn't even.
What are you doing here?
I didn't even make an attempt it didn't even occur to me to pull out my credit card. Didn't even cross my mind. We went down to the beach, got some ice cream, watched the fireworks. We couldn't get an Uber back because it was so crowded. I insisted we walk back on that in Laguna Beach from the restaurant in town to the Montage. There's no sidewalk. There's no place to walk. It was clearly way more dangerous than an adult celebrity doctor felt comfortable with. And we walked back and I said, "I got to get out of here. I'm bored." Trying to be funny. "I'm bored. I got to go." And then I sat in my car for 2 hours to get out of Laguna Beach, filled with a very, very real and honest resentment towards them about the traffic. I'm like, fuck this. I'm never doing this again. Never. I'm sitting going nowhere. It's complete and total gridlock all the way out of Laguna. I was like, I will never fucking do this again. No joke. I did it again this last 4th of July. I showed up.
And did he ever say,
I just showed up. Like I didn't tell him I was coming. I just showed up.
If I was you in that situation when he was like, "I'm working on my marriage, quality time with my wife," I would pull out a gun at the table and blow my brains out. Yeah, that's my.
I don't know.
Yeah, I would blow my brains out at the table.
I showed up this year. I just walked into their place in Laguna, and he's like, "Oh, look at it's become a ritual." I walked into the kitchen. I ate for 15 minutes and talked to him. We took a little walk, and then I split. Like I just went, "Thanks for the food. Bye."
Why aren't I friends with Dr. Drew?
You can be after this.
All right.
He would love you. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I was all
What is
over
the
the
name
map.
of your podcast and where can people see it?
Miscellaneous Adventures from the World of Mike Carano. It's just me walking around recording into my phone. Sometimes it's
And
funny,
brilliantly
sometimes it's
funny.
not.
One of my favorites.
Thank you. I love you. Thank you very much for having me over here. This is an honor. This is something I've not wanted to do because you're one of the people that I'm kind of, I don't want to say intimidated by, but there's
Why?
Dana, there's people I've known most of my life that I don't even try to speak around because I don't want to come. No, it's, I'm being very honest.
Okay.
And you're one of them. I'm not even going to try to have a conversation that's funny because this guy, I like this person so much. And Todd Glass is definitely one of those.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you one last stupid little story. I'm not a performer, but I do shows for my podcast people and they sell well.
Yeah.
Like they sell out. And I just stand there for an hour and a half and do whatever.
Mhm.
And they're very, very kind and unbelievably kind considering how not professional. And like last time I just started sobbing. Like a minute in. I started crying. Well, there was something that came up that was sad, and I just started sobbing, and I couldn't get through it. And I had to go like, we need to play a video right now, and I'm going to come back in a couple minutes. Of all the people I don't want sitting in the audience, number one, Todd Glass, front and center. Judd Apatow behind him.
Oh, God.
And then I got Dave Becky in the back. And I was like,
God.
I can't do this.
Oh, my God.
When it's people who know me, like the podcast people, and they're going to be accepting of everything I say. But to me, having to go like, I have to validate this as a show now because they're here. I didn't. But it took everything in my brain to go like, fucking don't look at Judd. Don't look at Todd. Focus on the people who are going to like everything you do. And it was a wonderful experience in retrospect. But at the time, I didn't want that. I said it that night because I was doing some songs too. And I went, this is the equivalent to, if Paul McCartney comes back in and I'm standing here with a guitar, I'm just going to walk. I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to walk out the door because I'm not going to go like, oh, here's a little thing I wrote that's in this movie no one ever saw. Right. All right. And have someone, I don't need Todd Glass, the guy who makes me laugh more than anybody, sitting
the human
right in the middle looking at me.
Human comedy.
But he was super, super respectful.
He's
and
a
into
lovely
it.
person.
Yeah.
They're all those three people are nice people.
But this is the same way. Like I can't.
Well, you don't feel that way about me. I'm pretty.
No, I know, but it's one of these things where this one-on-one is so much better than if I do someone's podcast and there's like 8 people because then I just want to sit like this. So I'm like, I don't know how to jump in and just go like, I got something.
Right,
you know?
right.
I'm not Jimmy Pardo where I got a brilliant, you know what I mean? It's.
I walked on stage at the Melrose Improv and I didn't know what I was going to do. It was a kind of like loose idea, but I was kind of like, whatever. And walk off stage. I look in the audience. Patrick Stewart.
Oh my God. I was there that night.
Yeah.
I was there that night.
You were there that night.
No.
And I was like, oh,
no.
And I could feel my feces turn to concrete in my body. Like, oh.
The first time Paul McCartney was there, we were all freaking out.
Sure.
There's no celebrity that could be a bigger deal to me.
Yeah, right. He's otherworldly. Yeah.
Every comic was there to work on material. It was an outstanding show. Jim Jeffries, Aziz, and Judd, and Rogan, all these people. Every person was working on material, and they went, "Nope, here we go."
Greatest hits,
greatest hits for 7 minutes, and that made it a better show for him.
Right.
But they didn't get to work on the material. But it was, I get it. I was there that Patrick Stewart night. I came out of the bathroom. I was walking in the bathroom. He was walking out, and I kind of was like, I don't even. Do you know him, right?
No.
Oh
no.
Can I tell you something about Shatner? And when I had the deal to do that Star Trek show, the what was going to hold it up was William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, because they, not legally, but Paramount won't go forward unless they sign off on their characters being created. Right. So I had to put together a package with the actors who were going to be playing them, and they went, Shatner's easy, he's a dream. Nimoy might be a big problem. Leonard Nimoy's exact note back: best of luck to you. Hope the show's great. William Shatner, I don't give a shit what he does. That's what they told me. That's what Paramount's lawyer told me, because I'm going to tell you exactly what happened.
That's funny.
And I was like, Shatner's like, I don't give a shit. Whatever.
There was a period where all of a sudden Rickles was really out.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? Like people found nothing Rickles did funny. They found it really offensive. And I think when Letterman started bringing him on, it started...
Definitely. Gave him his cool cred back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you stay around long enough. you just circle back. But was it you who saw? It was like they got a great air conditioning system here. Two fags on the roof with a piece of loose leaf paper going, ha.
Yeah, it was after the Desert Inn had gone through a $40 million remodel. I think you were at the show, right? It was Wrath. And Rickles is sweating, and he goes, I can't believe it. They spent $40 million on this place, and the best thing they can do for air conditioning is put a queer on the roof with a piece of paper going, fa. And people just lose their mind.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
All in delivery.
It's all in delivery. Yeah. And, like he would do Paul Robeson impressions well into the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, it was just completely bananas.
But that's why you went to those shows, because even as, fortunately, through Jill, I got to know Rickles, and the nicest.
Jill, your lovely wife.
Yes.
Yes. Just putting it into context.
Yes, I know. But
she's not some mystery Jill.
No, she's not Mystery Jill. That's another show. But he was so nice and sweet, and he knew what his persona was.
Yeah,
and he could turn it on. And I don't think Jerry could turn it on. I think Jerry, the persona of the greasy hair Jerry, especially the one that berated us for quite a while, he's just rage, because he never felt like he was treated like a genius. He did create the video tap. He wasn't amazing.
Yeah,
he was a genius.
He was a mad genius.
But his asshole.
Filmmakers, a great book about filmmaking.
But his assholeness outweighed that. Jerry Lewis has the goods. That guy knows how to write, direct, star, produce, create technical advancements. But he was such a prick that people couldn't get past it.
I think it's hard. I'm not going to let you out of here before you tell me about that meeting. We never even got into the day the clown cried. But to be as famous as Jerry Lewis was at such a young age is warping.
Yeah.
No question.
No doubt. And I think Eddie Murphy is an interesting analogy, because the only thing that I can relate to that was like Steve Martin and then Eddie Murphy were huge, crazy hot stars in their time. Steve Martin in 78 and Eddie Murphy in about 83. And for Eddie Murphy specifically, because Steve Martin had been at it for years and he was a fully formed adult and could handle it. And he was able to move through the different phases of his career with a lot of dignity. He understood that you can only be the new guy once and that it's all cyclical. And he was able to quite brilliantly move into other areas and got into writing pretentious plays and pretentious books. And Eddie Murphy sort of closed himself off from the public. He doesn't interact with the public at all. And Jerry, like Trump, went into rage that it changed.
Yeah.
Like, why am I not the number one? I don't understand it. And I think that that's because when you're 16 or 17, you don't understand when things like that change. And emotionally, that's probably about where he was.
But also with the thing with Jerry, not that he would ever ask me for advice.
Not now. You'd need a Ouija board.
Oh, I have one. I have one in the car. But he never seemed to open himself up to the world that was changing, because that office was stuck in time. His dress was stuck in time. I'm sure his friends were stuck in time. Mm-hmm. He could have left and, let's say, been a professor in London at a film school or traveled or whatever to give the amazing knowledge that he had. But he was so trapped in his own Jerry-ness that I think it actually hurt him.
Well, even the choice to do Damn Yankees, which
Absolutely.
was from the 50s. But I do remember that when he started talking about the script, which was it was going to be a mockumentary, he was explaining to us, now a great opening could be that I'm a professor. I'm giving a lecture, and my daughter Gina Davis would come in. And I was like, well, Jerry, it's really going to be more kind of documentary-ish and this and that. And that's when I think that's like the kind of issues we talked about. I mean, did we talk about anything in the room that day that you remember?
Yeah.
Besides, I remember him yelling at you like that you were not qualified to be someone who commented on comedy.
Yes. I mean, the condensed version is, and correct me if I'm wrong, we got there. It was not a warm welcome. His ancient 90-year-old receptionist at the front, who was basically dressed like she was in Little House on the Prairie with like a high collar or something. Yeah. And we went to that back room of his office, saw the photos and everything else. He showed up late. He was in tighty-whitey tennis shorts, a black polo shirt, a leather jacket, and 30 weight in his hair. And then he had all those cronies there. And we sat down and you were pitching him why he should remain with the movie. And he was really angry. And then he started to get angry and angry. And this is the fast version. But I remember that he exploded saying that your movie was not going to give him a heart attack and that the young people don't care about Jerry Lewis. in this movie. And then we started to speak up as younger people. And then he said, screaming, this is about after 45 minutes of just a tirade. And he said, the bottom line is nobody in Duluth is going to give a shit about this movie. And then I said, Jerry, I have to tell you, because you and I looked at each other and realized it was over.
Remember.
I said, Jerry, I got to tell you, I'm from Duluth and I would love to see this movie. And he said, you are? And I said, no, I'm from Canada. I'm just screwing with you. And he detonated in the room and was like, fuck you, you fucking faggot. And he just started calling me, he just started calling me a faggot over and over and over again, saying to get out of Vegas.
Get out of Vegas.
You know, I gotta, did he call you a faggot? I don't remember him using that, but I do remember he said, you know, you bring me this guy who looks like he should be working for IBM, not doing comedy. He shouldn't have an opinion by the comedy. And by the way, you might have a very big career. I remember him saying that.
Yeah. He kept berating me and he called me a faggot. And then he also said that nobody wants to see, these are his words, nobody wants to see that dyke Janine Garofalo on a movie.
I remember that very well, yes.
And then I said, Jerry, I have to tell you, I went out with Janine for a year. She's a lovely person. She's not a dyke. And he's like, fuck you.
That's the one thing, by the way, you're not lying.
Yes, exactly.
I had buried that, but I do remember the last thing he said was, I can't let this movie give me a heart attack. Right. I'm done. And he stood up and it was over. Thank you. He said thank you, shook my hand.
And that was how long of a dance? Was that a full year? Like, when was the first time you'd...
It was at least 18 months.
And just over the minute it... So here's what I think. That if Trump could have backed out of the election, the way Jerry backed out of your movie, he would have.
Yeah.
But he couldn't and he got stuck.
The thing I remember that the punctuation mark in that meeting, because you were there on a mission of good and Jerry clearly wasn't going to do it and just wanted to beat us up. And all of his cronies were there like yes-anding him and yeah. And then it exploded in the Hindenburg of rage in front of us. And then he said, and now the ladies have made us a delicious lunch. And then that old woman from the front came in with like egg salad sandwiches.
Schlotzky's.
Yes. And it was
he loved Schlotzky's.
And we just sat there silently because we were so far out of town, we had to call a cab.
And like after he screamed at you, he served you lunch, or was it lunch for him and his friends and you guys had to leave?
My guess is it was lunch that was there for the meeting. Then the meeting went south and the lunch was still there, but we had to wait for a cab to get out of there. And that's when I went to his office supply closet and stole a bunch of Jerry Monogram stuff.
Yes.
Because I knew I'd never be back. And then I think you and I saw the video tap on his desk, right? He was angrily eating his lunch, and there was the video tap with the Jerry Lewis caricature sticker on it behind his desk. And it was just him and his cronies chuckling.
I remember, I mean, after he said it was over, I kept thinking like, oh my God, the movie's going to fall apart. I've blocked all that, but I do remember there was like this half-hour period where I kept expecting him to go, okay, we're going to do it. But that didn't happen. The investors, when I told them Jerry Lewis was out, they were like, well, who else can you get? That it turned out that it was really Janine holding the money together.
Oh, and you thought the movie was dead.
Yeah.
And they were like, who else can you get?
And I've got two great PSs about Jerry Lewis, but Jerry Stiller was brought to me. I had by Ben. And I was having coffee with Jerry Stiller and being so shell-shocked about
shocked.
Thank you, about Jerry Lewis. I was explaining all these things about the movie and what it could be and why he should do it.
By the way, I know I have a very good friend in the music industry that was once shell-shocked by Michelle Shocked. So
that's a very statistically unlikely.
Talked about that.
So you're with Jerry Stiller.
I'm explaining all these things like he's Jerry Lewis, and finally he goes, you don't have to tell me all this. I want to do it. We're going to do it. It'll be great.
And he was awesome.
And he was awesome and such a sweet guy.
Yeah.
Jerry Lewis, I never heard from again.
He's the antithesis. He's the anti-Jerry.
The movie comes out 3 years later. It plays city to city. It opens in Las Vegas and it gets a good review in the Las Vegas Sun. And I'm sitting in my office and somebody says to me, Jerry Lewis is calling you. And I was sure it was like Rob.
Right.
And I go, hello. I was like, hello, Steve. Hi, Jerry. And I'm trying to figure out if it's Jerry. As he keeps talking to me, I realize it is Jerry. And he's chatting about nothing. And he says to me, whatever happened to that movie you were doing?
The day the review came out?
Yeah.
Not so.
What a coincidence.
And I said, oh, it came out. I mean, and he's like, oh, did it? And I said, are you making a joke? And he said, no, I haven't Haven't heard anything about it. Okay. Good to talk to you, Jerry. Good to talk to you, Steve.
Bizarre.
Period. 4 years later, I'm doing the Paul Williams documentary. I'm following him around. Paul goes to Las Vegas. He's judging a talent show. Turns out one of the other judges is Jerry Lewis. Now Jerry is in his early 80s. He's starting to like really gray. They're sitting in a booth in the showroom. Paul's got a mic on. I've got a camera with a telephoto lens on the table. And Paul says, I'm doing a documentary with someone who was going to do a movie with you, Steve Kessler. And Jerry Lewis, who I thought was out of it, looks at Paul and goes, Steve Kessler, I hope you have a good lawyer.
Wow.
Yeah. That was the end of me and Jerry Lewis.
Did that cause a problem with you and Paul?
No, none.
But I just want to put a button on our experience with Jerry that is a compliment to you, because the movie looked like it was going away, and you flew all the way there to talk to this guy, to be respectful, to explain what you'd been explaining to him for 2 years, 3 years. You bounced all over the place. He knew that he held the fate of the movie in his hands and decided to be such a dick about it. He couldn't be straight. Yeah. And I think in that meeting, we saw what his real personality is, which is a guy who's just so deeply unhinged and doesn't feel like he's ever been treated properly, and just went off. But he's a bully. Well,
it is very Trumpian in the fact that these people who don't need Freud to see that being an only child, but being his parents' second love, which is how we interpret. If your parents are never around because they're always on the road doing their act, you feel like you come second to your parents' act. So you have a kid who doesn't feel like he deserves to be loved, because if your parents don't love you, that's it. So he feels innately unlovable and needs everyone to love him to fill that hole, and then hates them for loving him, because if they're right, he's wrong. And if he's wrong, that's his self-identity, and it's an existential death. So you hate the people that give you the thing that you think you crave, because it means that you're not who you think you are. And you lash out at them, which is why that everybody gets close to you gets eventually destroyed, just like Trump. And all of these people, and with Trump, it's even bigger because it's writ large. It's like Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell don't like Donald Trump, but they thought, well, he is a great Trojan horse for us to put through our agenda. But they realized that, no, it's not about you. It's about me. And they are learning now that they are getting chewed up and spat out like everyone else that's ever come near.
Well, yeah, in my experience with Jerry, it was always about him. It was never about, well, maybe I'll take, okay, it's going to be great. I'm going to be with these young comics and everything. Mm-hmm. But I mean, maybe that's how you become a legend. Maybe Donald Trump, one day, will come out and sing You'll Never Walk Alone.
Yeah.
And then that's how we'll know it's over.
You get right to the great quote that I believe it was Henry Kissinger said about Richard Nixon, which was, can you imagine what this man could have accomplished if only someone had loved him? And then the counter to that was, Richard Nixon, who had been loved, would have never been president.
It's true.
Right on, man.
Wow.
What an ending.
And now the ladies have made us a delicious lunch.
Other podcast reach for the sky. Dana Gould bound. We barely try.
This has been the Dana Gould Hour, brought to you by the Internet. Music by Andy Paley, with Jake Posner behind the board. Produced by Jeff Fox. Graphic design and web production by Spencer Hunt and Segan Friend. Sound editing and post-production by Jalinda Palmer and Joe Napolitano. Hey, if you like the show, why don't you drop us a line at show@danagould.com. Tom Kenny speaking.
With a big cock on it.